Hi, folks, and welcome to this week's episode of The Big Show with Chris Meaux. I am he who has already now previously been mentioned, Chris Meaux. I hope you're doing great on this Friday, April the 24th, 2015. And I am coming to you from Big Show Production Studios, a.k.a. the Big Show. No, you see, I did that wrong. Usually I say this. I'm coming to you from Big Show Studios, a.k.a. the Big Show Production Compound, a.k.a. the third bedroom here at our house in beautiful Lafayette, Louisiana, located in the hub city, the heart of Cajun country. And I don't know about you, but it is extremely, extremely humid where I am right now. Whoever you are, wherever you're listening, might be the complete opposite. Wherever you are, whatever the weather, I hope that you are safe and okay. And I thank you for listening to the show. That was a new theme that you heard there by a Scottish band called Gauge. That's called Heavy Goods, and that's the new theme for the Big Show. And I found it over on the Free Music Archive, freemusicarchive.org, and I'll have a link, as always, to that song and any other free music that I use in the show, because it's under Creative Commons licenses, and you can find those and use music and just listen to it. It's great stuff. It's free, and there are certain licenses that you have to follow to use this stuff. So, yeah, great stuff. New theme for the Big Show. We're going to try it out and see how it works. I really dig it, though. All right. Well, we've got a very interesting week, I think, here on the Big Show. I've got, excuse me, first of all, let me talk about that. I've got an entity living in my bronchial passageways still. We could make this a regular segment, kids. This is the Big Show Chris Meaux health update. No, last week I mentioned that I was sick. My voice was kind of off last week, and I had been given a series of steroid pills, which I took, which was great. I felt wonderful with that. That's partially sarcastic. I felt better, but I still have some slightly swollen glands and a lot of phlegm. So, isn't that lovely? Oh, man, I think, I have actually have a phlegm sound effect. That's right there. Yes, that has been inside of my bronchiae, plural of bronchius, bronchial. I don't know what's happening. But anyway, so I started taking an antibiotic. I believe that it is called doxycycline. They should rename it crap-a-lot-line, because this stuff, I tell you, it just goes through you like crap through a goose, right, Ed? Hi-oh! That's right. It's pretty bad. I know this is all, you're like, why? Why would he talk about these things? Well, because I'm Chris Meaux, and anybody who knows me well, or you who will know me well from this show, I am who I am on this show. This is me, kids. Like, Beetlejuice would say, that's right, kid, you know what I'm saying? So that's me, and I talk about these things sometimes, and people do run away in fear and disgust. It happens. But I am doing a little better. I'm taking this stuff. It's very hard on the old gut flora, the gut flora. I really like saying gut flora, because we have gut flora. If you're not sure what that is, I don't think we have any gut fauna. That's good, but we have some gut flora. It's the healthy bacteria lives in our stomach. And antibiotics will kill those. So I'm also taking some acidophilus. Now watch my language on that. If there are kids in the room, oh no, explain acidophilus is just a nice little tiny organism in your stomach that's good for you. So I'm taking that. I'm feeling a little better, but I still have the sinus issues. I still have stuff in my chest. So anyway, there's the update. All right, enough time wasted on me. I mean, the show can't be all about me the entire time, right? Anywho. All right, well, look, we've got a great show. I'm going to say this. I don't want to be hyperbolic. I'm not going to say we have a great show. I'm going to say this. We have a show this week. Is it great? It's not for me to say. That's for you, the listener, to decide. I've got a very good friend of mine, Jeremy Peck. He and I go way back. Jeremy is on the show this week. We're going to talk about some of the news items in the Geek Peek, which is, of course, the geek news part of the Big Show with Chris Meaux. We're going to talk about some things that were in last week's edition of the Geek Peek. And, excuse me. And the main thing we're going to talk about probably is Batfleck v. Not So Superman, which is the new movie coming out next year. but the trailer was released last week, and there was a lot of hubbub about that. So we're going to discuss that and some other topics, and very glad that he was able to be on the show. He was a great guest. And, I'm going to just go ahead and put this out there because I don't think I've said this even now. Just to plug the show, we are on iTunes, and that means that if you found me through iTunes, you first of all, please subscribe, rate, and review, and then share the show. But you can go back to episode 0, and episode 0 is kind of like an About Me page on a website. So it'll tell you about me, who I'm, what I'm about, who I am, what this show is supposed to be. And I interview a very special guest in that show who knows all those things better than no one else. And of course, I interview myself. So it's an entertaining episode there. Go and listen to that. And I don't think I mentioned it in there, but I am a huge nerd. However, and I say that with pride, I'm a geek. I'm not offended by that term unless somebody's using it in a mean-spirited way. Then it bothers me a little bit. But I am a geek. However, I have very few friends who share those interests. In fact, right off the top of my head, I can only think of 3 who are good friends who I can talk with on a regular basis about these things. And Jeremy Peck is one of them, and he and I have a lot of the same interests. What I like about having Jeremy on and talking to Jeremy in general is that we don't share the same opinions on some of these things. And that's why it's cool to talk to him, because it makes me think of things I didn't think of, and hopefully for him the same. And it's good to not just have somebody that's with you that agrees all the time on all of your issues, as it were, your beliefs, rather, especially when it comes to something as life impacting as comic books, and related superhero genres. I mean, it's very serious stuff. I'm, of course, being sarcastic. But I take this as seriously as some people take sports, okay? This is sports for me. It's the ideal sport for Chris Meaux because it doesn't involve any actual physical activity or not much, and no going outdoors. So perfect sport for me. All right. Well, anyway, so that's going to be coming up later in the show, kids. Right now, I'm going to take a break. When I get back, it'll be time for this week's monologue. All of the other segments this week are a little what's the word I'm looking for? I ain't good at words. No, they're all a little shorter than normal because Jeremy's on. He and I talk for a good while, but we'll get back and we will kick things off with this week's monologue. Stick around. And we're back. So this week in the old entertainment, and well, not just entertainment, but in news in general, during the monologue, I like to take a look at those things. Not much going on. One story that's really, really heartfelt, really sweet. It's a true story. A part of it is you're going to be like, oh, and then you hear the rest of it and you're like, oh, that's a shame. And because it's also kind of heartbreaking in a different way. So here we go. A 3-year-old girl was born without feet. Okay, this happens actually fairly commonly, but this story doesn't. So a 3-year-old girl born without feet received as a gift a puppy born without a paw. All right. Oh, that's very sweet. And, of course, that's wonderful for her. So she's got an animal that will be able to provide her comfort and security and a sense of not being different because she is without her own feet and this dog is missing a paw. It's a beautiful story. However, upon hearing this story, Justin Bieber's mom was very upset. She was very upset upon hearing this, as she is still waiting for her son to receive a puppy also born without a brain. So, see, what I did there was I took a story that was heartwarming and I put a nice little twisted kind of bad twist on it. That's wrong. Ed, how dare you? How dare you, Ed? All right, moving on. Disney cruise ships. This was in the news this week, and this is exciting. Still won't get me on a cruise ship, but Disney cruise ships will transform their play areas for kids into recreations of the Millennium Falcon starship. How awesome is that? There is no word yet, however, if children will be allowed to rip each other's arms off if they lose at Dejarik. So now, that was a super nerdy joke, all right? And what that means is, should I explain it or not? Okay, for those of you who are not that nerdy, I'm going to just say this. In the original Star Wars movie, before it had a subtitle, before it was an episode, They're on the Millennium Falcon there, and you have C3PO, R2D2, and Chewbacca. They're playing a game. It's the kind of holographic chess, okay? And Han Solo says to C3PO, "You should let the Wookiee win." Everybody knows that line, and the reason is because a droid, he says, won't rip your arms off if he loses, right? So, kids would rip each other because it's the Millennium Falcon. Anyway, I thought it was damned hilarious, and so did Ed. Right, Ed? Didn't you like that? Because oh! Hang on. Sound guy, you're fired. All right, pal? Yeah, pack it up. Again? Yeah, no. That was clever, though, that you hit it again, dramatic, since I fired you. What was it I was asking for, though, sound guy? Yeah. All right, Ed. Anyway, speaking of Ed McMahon and that genre of some of my heroes here, one of my big influences, David Letterman. He's approaching, sadly, the end of his late night career, and he's looking towards the last shows and the last guests that will be on those last shows. And he's reached out to two people that I think are very controversial. One of them is, of course, Brian Williams, who's been on his show quite often, and then Jay Leno. Now, Brian Williams, after the whole brouhaha that occurred recently, he was no longer going to be a guest on the show. David invited him, and he canceled after this whole thing went on with him lying to the American people. And as far as Leno, Leno just, who the hell wants to talk to Jay Leno? But he and Dave had a history. They go way back, and Dave, of course, was hurt that, we're not sure how hurt he was, but it's pretty clear that he was not happy that Jay Leno got the Tonight Show. Well, David Letterman, in wanting to finish his career, has reached out to both of these guys. Leno has yet to respond. But look, safe bet, okay? I'd put the odds on this as very good. Leno's going to appear. Williams, however, has responded, and Williams has already said his appearance is all going to depend on his next deployment to the Middle East as a soldier and his scheduled visit to help repair the International Space Station. So that's right, Ed, because he lies about everything. He pretends that he's, Anyway, all right. Well, a Breaking Bad creator, this is one of my also personal favorite creators of any genre. Breaking Bad creator and producer Vince Gilligan is set to write, produce, and possibly direct Beanstalk. This is not made up. This is real. A new version of the Jack and the Beanstalk story. Now, I'm looking forward to this. I love Breaking Bad. Haven't got a chance to watch Better Call Saul. I'm waiting for that to, get a full season on Netflix and I can catch up with it. But love Breaking Bad. Here's what I'm wondering, though, and here's what I'm actually really looking forward to in this. I'm looking forward to Jack chopping down the beanstalk and then demanding that the giant say his name as he falls to his death, and then seeing Jack dissolve that massive corpse with some acid, right? Because that would be just like in Big Bad, where they killed the guy and then they had to melt his body with acid. That's right. That was a great part of the show. Well, all right, now this is a new segment here, and again, I don't have any audio yet for this, and I should have some kind of intro audio, but I don't. It's a new segment that I probably will do every week if there are any contenders. This week, this guy is just crawling over landmines to get elected here. It's called the Douchebag of the Week, and this week it is Krishnan Guru Murphy, Channel 4, I believe it is, news out in the UK. I didn't really look into his show because if he's any indication, I don't really want to know a whole lot about it, so the name's probably wrong. You've seen this on the internet, and I'm going to have a link in the show notes, kids. He interviews Robert Downey Jr., and this is the second time that this Guru Murphy loser has done this, but he's interviewing people during press tours for their films. And he did this back in 2012, I believe it was, or 2011, when he interviewed Quentin Tarantino about Django. And as he's interviewing him about the movie, he's asking some pretty good questions. They're insightful, they're appropriate to this kind of interview. Then he starts getting very prying, and it's like he's trying to corner Tarantino into saying something that Tarantino doesn't want to say. Tarantino walked out of the interview practically, or almost walked out of it. He got very confrontational, and he said, "I'm shutting you down," which is what needed to happen to the little punk. And now here's Robert Downey Jr., who to me is just to be able to be in the same room with this guy. You know, this Guru Murphy needs to be thankful, in my opinion, okay, that he's there talking to these people. He's getting to talk to Robert Downey Jr. I would ask some questions about Age of Ultron. I would say, hey, I really enjoy your work. Can't wait to see this movie, and I hope that you're going to still be involved. What's going to, you know, I would have asked him some of those questions. Instead, Krishnan Guru Murphy decides that he's going to ask him questions about his dark past, at which point, very classy of him, Robert Downey Jr. says, "Why are we doing this?" And then he eventually gets up and walks out. A lot of people in their headlines on that story have put that he stormed out. He did not storm out. He just left and said thank you and left. And, you know, what a douchey thing to do. Okay, which, you know, I'm sorry if that term offends anybody, but to me it was the most apropos, and it was nicer than some other words I have for this guy. But, you know, come on. You're talking to the guy about his movie. He's a great guy. He's put that behind him. You know, I'm sure he's still haunted by his past, as we all are in some ways. We all have things that we still struggle with. Don't bring that up during an interview. If I went to your place of work and just said, hey, tell me about, you know, that dark past that I know about, you wouldn't like that at all. And so, Douchebag of the Week award this week goes to Krishnan Guru Murphy. I have a link to the interview if you want to see what it is I'm talking about, because I don't have any clips, any audio clips. You can check it out in the show notes. Well, that's going to do it for the Big Show monologue this week. Stick around. In just a few, I'll be back with this week's edition of the Big Show Geek Peek, a look at the big geek news of the past week. Stick around. And we're back. All right, now it's time for a look at the Big Show Geek Peek each week. That's the name that I came up with for this segment, by the way. I take a peek, a look, for you at the big geek news. And what does that mean? All of the superhero and sci-fi and horror genre-related stuff that's going on in the news. I will give you an update on what I think is the most newsworthy, and usually it is the best stuff to hear about because I have really good taste. So let's be sure. No, I'm so arrogant. What's wrong with me? No, but this is the most interesting stuff, and I think the stuff that maybe folks that wouldn't call themselves geeks who like to follow this stuff, they go see the movies or what have you, may not look it up. And of course I do every day. That's part of my daily routine. I look this stuff up because I enjoy it. So this is a big story. It's all over various news outlets, and I am going to give what may be an unpopular opinion about it, but I feel like I need to give my take on it. X-Men character Iceman, who has been he was actually one of the original 5 X-Men, going all the way back to, I believe, 1964. First issue of of X-Men. It wasn't Uncanny X-Men, and it's excuse me, Cyclops, Marvel Girl, Angel, Beast, and Iceman. And I love those characters. I've always loved the original X-Men. Love Wolverine and the later characters too, but I have a special place in my heart for them. That was one of the first comics I started reading as a kid. It was those characters, but the comic was called X Factor. And in X Factor, the original X-Men left being X-Men and pretended to be mutant hunters. And so, you know, all the other X-Men and the other mutants thought, man, these guys are bad news. What they were really doing was, once they were arresting or capturing these mutants, they were taking them to a safe, secure facility where they were training them, kind of like Professor Xavier did, but they were training them in the use of their powers and helping them to cope and deal with their lives. So it was just a great twist on the X-Men, and I thought it was a great way to use those characters. So I have the whole run of the original X Factor and really love that comic. So Iceman, you know, I really like Iceman. This does not change what I'm about to read. Does not change my feelings on the character, but it does frustrate me, and I will explain why. X-Men character Iceman comes out as gay. All right, now this was all over various news stories, news sites rather, comic sites. I think it made CNN. It made all the major news outlets because it's and that's why let's be clear. That's why Marvel does these things. That's why DC did it with Green Lantern a few years ago. They don't do it for the reasons they're going to tell you, which, again, my opinion, they're going to say, oh, this is so that we can be more inclusive and so that we can appeal to more. No, you're doing it for news bites because it gets people talking briefly about your comics and about your stuff, and it's to move units of a book. That's all it is, okay? And here's my feelings on this. I have no problem with gay characters, transsexual characters, any of the whatever, the whole list of there's a long title that I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but it's lesbian, gay, transgender, queer, etc. I forget what the other are. This is the title for this segment of the population. I don't have any problem with that. Have as many gay characters as you want. Have as many different ethnicities as you want. Great. There's no reason comics shouldn't have that. And in fact, guess what, kids? Comics have had that before other genres had it. Because in the X-Men, there's a character named Northstar who famously, about 2 years ago, got married, and that was in the news, okay? And he's gay. So, you know what? Hey, I don't really seriously have no problem with that. Here's why I have a problem. I do not like revisionist history. As a comic fan, it's kind of my literary background, being an English major and a student of literature. I don't like when you go to the source material and decide to change it for no reason. So now what they've done is, the storyline is this. The original X-Men, who have changed drastically since their first appearance as X-Men, in the comics, these younger versions of them came through time to the future, to the present, and it's revealed that by Marvel Girl, who is, of course, Jean Grey. Jean Grey says, oh, wait, I'm just realizing this, Bobby, you're gay. And she's reading his thoughts, of course, and his feelings, and she can detect this. And so the idea is that this guy's coming from the past, but if he was gay then now we look at his whole past in all the other comics he's ever been in. Iceman had his own miniseries. He had his own team-up title. He was in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, the animated series in the 80s. And now we're to look back and say, oh, he was really gay all this time. And people are saying the signs were all there. Here's what I don't like about that. I read a bulk of that character's storyline, okay, in X Factor, which is why I went into that explanation a few minutes ago. It isn't there. There's no indication that it's there. And I don't understand why people make stuff up out of whole cloth to try and get, I guess, what would it be, hits, or to get more money, or get people to come read their comics. Don't know why Marvel has any rationale behind that, or why they're seeking to do this. Here's what I would rather do. Create new, compelling characters who are characters first, and then worry about their backstory. If that's a part of who they are, great. If you're going to just tag it on to this one character and try to get people to be more interested in your product, no, I don't care for that. Just like Green Lantern, Alan Scott, Green Lantern, I thought there was really no reason for this. Create a new character who is gay. Anyway, that's my take, but it's all over the news. If you are not a geek and you just check news sites, you're going to probably run into that story or see it on the news because it's already gotten that far. It's been talked about. Excuse me a second here. I got the dry mouth. Had to drink a little water. All right, moving on. There is going to be, every year that there isn't a sequel to the Star Wars trilogy films, there is going to be what's called an anthology film. All right, this was released last week with the trailer release last week. Also, we found out about the Star Wars anthology. Now, we knew these movies were coming. This was announced actually when the sale of Lucasfilm happened with Disney. Disney announced we're making Episode 7. We're also going to make a new Star Wars movie every year. So this is that off year when it's not Episode 8 or Episode 9. This is going to be a separate movie that deals with some other aspect of the Star Wars universe. Star Wars Anthology has been released as the official title of these movies, and we know now that Star Wars Rogue One is going to be the title of the movie coming out next year. So it's going to be coming out in 2017, and of course, 2016, because of course Episode 7 is only months away this year, 2015. It's in December. And so this movie, it was revealed, is going to deal with a group of rebels whose purpose is to go and steal the Death Star plans. Now, if you remember in Episode 4, the original Star Wars, in the crawl at the beginning, it mentions that plans were stolen, and then that's a whole plot, That's what R2-D2 is getting from Princess Leia, and then they go down to Tatooine, and R2's mission is to bring those plans to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that's how Luke gets involved, and of course they get the plans, and then they're able to attack, and Luke's able to blow up the Death Star. So this is a huge aspect of the Star Wars story, and I think it's awesome. And they're trying. They've got Gareth Edwards. If you're not familiar with him, he directed a great movie called Monsters. I only have seen parts of it, but it is a great movie about aliens that come to Earth, and it's just a very, it's a very from what I saw, a powerful character story. It's not like what it would sound like, but it's about these two characters and how they react to what's going on around them. And then he also directed one of my favorite movies from last year, excuse me, called Godzilla, the remake of Godzilla. I thought was a great film. I thought it could have been could have had a little more of a sense of adventure to it, a little more fun. It was pretty heavy, but I love that movie. I own it on Blu-ray. If I buy it on Blu-ray at this point, to me, that means I like it, and I like that movie a lot. A lot of people there were mixed reviews. Gareth Edwards, though, really like his work. He is going to be directing Star Wars Rogue One, which will be about these characters going to get the Death Star plans. And he said in an interview that this will be more of a war story and deal with the consequences of war. And I think that's great. I think that's awesome, because it's called Star Wars. And what does that look like? We've seen kind of the swashbuckling battles, the intense battles going on, but we've never seen kind of the ugliness of war. Now, in the Clone Wars cartoon, they've actually, surprisingly, done a great job of showing some of the horrors of war and the battles and how the clones have gone through these 3 years of constant battle, right? And so this is going to be interesting to see how the rebels are dealing with striking against the Empire, which is this huge... Imagine if you were, you were a rebel force and you were trying to strike against one of the major world powers, how dangerous that would be, and how hard it would be. So this, I think, is going to be an awesome thing, and it's like a Christmas gift. Every year you get a Star Wars movie. Hopefully the quality will always be great. It looks like for the next decade or so we can be sure it will be. We don't know what's going to follow this movie, Rogue One. We don't know what the next one's going to be. So, but anyway, so that is huge news and great news that is out there. That interview, I'll have the link in the show notes for you. Marvel, Sony, or as I'm calling them now, money, because that's what they're going to be making together. Lots and lots of. They've narrowed a list of 5 Spider-Man candidates. There's a new Spider-Man, who is going to be teenaged Spider-Man, high school age. He's going to be in the Marvel Cinematic Universe now. Marvel and Sony share the rights for that. And Spider-Man will not get an origin story. He'll get his own movie in 2017. But he will not get another origin story, and he's going to make appearances in these other movies that are coming out after. I think he's going to make his first appearance in the Captain America Civil War, which comes out next summer. So they've got 5 young actors, because, the last guy, as much as I liked him, Andrew Garfield, was like almost 40 playing Spider-Man. I thought he did a great job, but they're going younger now. They've narrowed a list of Spider-Man candidates to 5. Asa Butterfield is the only one on here who I recognize. He played Ender in Ender's Game. And then also, if you saw the movie Hugo, he was the boy in Hugo. Haven't seen it, but I've heard great things. Nat Wolff, Liam James, Timothy Chalamet, I believe is how you pronounce it, and Tom Holland. And so, I have no feelings either way, because I don't know who these actors are, really. So I just hope that they do this well and that Spider-Man gets his due, because I don't think it really got much better than the first Spider-Man movie way back when with Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi as a director. I did like Spider-Man 2, but I thought the Doc Ock thing was a little weird. He was not really a villain as much as he was kind of, taken over by the arms, but certainly it was better than Spider-Man 3, and better than some of the Amazing Spider-Man. Did enjoy the Amazing Spider-Man, the first one. Really did enjoy that. Didn't think I would. Amazing Spider-Man 2, the suit's the best part of the movie, and Andrew Garfield is great, and Emma Stone is great. Didn't care for the rest of it. There's my mini review. So anyway, that's coming out now. In Spider-Man news as well, a first ever, it's never happened, first ever animated Spider-Man film, this will be in the big screen here, is scheduled for 2018, a year after the debut of the new Spidey movie. And so the new Spidey movie comes out in 2017. A year later, we get an animated Spider-Man movie. And who is writing this? The guys who wrote the Lego movie. All right, so I'm really excited about that. I love the Lego movie. I think that's smart on Marvel's part and Sony's part and Disney's part. Well, all three of them, yeah. Excuse me, because you're not to exploit the character, but do something different in animation you wouldn't do in a movie. I think that's wise, and looking forward to that. So that's coming out in 2018. Moving on, the third Star Trek movie will possibly be titled Star Trek Beyond, which I like that title. Writer and actor Simon Pegg, he plays Scotty. I am a huge Simon Pegg fan. He's on a short list of people, celebrities I actually like to meet and take a picture with. Get a photograph or autograph. Love him. I think he's just very talented, funny. He's in some of my all-time favorite movies ever. All of his movies that I've seen him in are fantastic. Hot Fuzz, of course. Shaun of the Dead, my favorite of the movies that he's done. And he's also, of course, I'm forgetting the third movie, At World's End, I believe it's called, where they do the pub crawl and then it's the end of the world, which is awesome. That is a great movie, too. British humor, very funny, though. British humor is the best humor, in my opinion. They're the funniest people on earth, I think, because they're so smart. No offense to we folks here. Our Canadians are also very funny. No offense to us here in the United States. But Simon Pegg is writing this movie, and they lost their director. Of course, it was J.J. Abrams. He went off to do Star Wars. And Simon Pegg's going to come in as a writer, replacing Bob Orsi, who left earlier this year, and or the end of last year, and now Simon Pegg is co-writing this with another gentleman whose name I don't have. Idris Elba, who I'm a big fan of. If you remember on The Office, Idris Elba played the assistant manager that came in to Dunder Mifflin with Michael Scott when they were having some trouble there before they sold the company to Sabre. And so he is a great actor. He was also, of course, in another movie that a lot of people didn't care for that I love and own, and that's Pacific Rim. And he is in there. He says the great line, "We are canceling the apocalypse." So Idris Elba is he's a badass. So this is going to be great that he's in this movie. He's playing a new character, not an old character like Khan that we've already seen. So can't wait. This is all good news. I thought Star Trek Into Darkness was Star Trek Into Crapness myself. I just thought, why touch Star Trek 2? You don't need, why go there? Why do this tired plot of here's a guy who wants revenge and he's got a weapon that can destroy the Earth and we've got to stop him. We've seen that. We saw it in the Next Generation movies. We saw it kind of in some of the movies of the original series. We saw Khan already, and you can't beat Ricardo Montalban. Do something new. And if it fails, you know what? At least people will say, hey, at least they tried something new, right? Instead of, oh, it sucks because they tried to rip off Wrath of Khan, the greatest Star Trek movie perhaps of all. Certainly one of them. Finally, the official HD version of Batfleck v. Not So Superman, which is what I call Batman v. Superman, Dawn of Justice, was released and has been made the subject of numerous memes and parodies. I think a lot of them are hilarious. They all pretty much mock this movie. The trailer, rather. No one's seen the movie to mock, but they mock the teaser trailer. And I'm going to put my favorites in the show notes so you can take a look at some of them. They're memes. There's actually a couple of really great video parodies already that have been done, and I'll have a link to those as well for you to check out. So it's been the subject of a great deal of controversy among nerd kind, and my guest this week, Jeremy Peck, and I are going to talk about that teaser. We're going to talk about Man of Steel, what we think about all of this, Ben Affleck as Batman. We're going to talk about that later in the show. I'm going to take a break. When I get back, very brief edition of the Big Show Weird Wire. Stick around. And And I'm back. Hopefully you are as well. Now, Big Show Weird Wire, only 2 stories this week in the Weird Wire. One of them, though, I mean, these 2 stories are humdingers. So it's a quality over quantity here. Tumor in woman's brain turns out to be her embryonic twin. Now, we've heard of this before, where a person will find a growth of some kind, and it turns out to be that they had a twin in the embryonic stages, in situ, as they say, and then it was ingested by one of the children, and they'll find it later on. This young woman started having difficulty comprehending things she read and heard. She, when a lot of people were talking to her, she became disoriented. Doctors discovered that she had a tumor. She goes to surgery, and they actually find it is an embryonic twin. 26-year-old Yamini Karanam, I believe. She's an Indiana University PhD student. They went in and did brain surgery, and her surgeon said that he was very surprised. The twin had never developed, but it still had bone, hair, and teeth. All right, and so she's Karanam is going to make a full recovery, which is great news. And this apparently happens kind of often. In 2009, the Telegraph reported that Gavin Hyatt, a 30-year-old plumber in England, shocked doctors when his abdomen burst, and it caused the remains of his embryonic twin to spill out. It was like something from the movie Alien, his doctor, Joe Santos, told The Sun at the time. And fortunately, Hyatt was fine after the incident and said, and get this, he decided to keep the remains of his twin in a jar. I call him Little Gav, he said, according to the Telegraph. So that's just... I don't know how you would do that in a jar. I mean, this is essentially finding out that, I mean, I would think your parents would have a say on it because it was going to be one of their kids. Hello, it's your sibling. You keep them in a jar? I would want to do a burial. Name the embryonic twin that never was. Bury the child. Yikes. No judgment. I'm not judging this guy. I'm just saying that's what I would do if that had happened to me. And I would give my parents a say. I mean, maybe they had a say. I don't know. Yikes. Very weird. Now, the other weird news item, very quickly. Use Google Street View to hunt for Nessie. That's right. You can now use Street View, which is, if you've never played with Google Street View, it's awesome. And scary at the same time that people can look at your house. They just type in an address and, oh, look, there's your front yard. But Street View now lets you hunt for the Loch Ness Monster. That's right. You don't have to leave your house at all or the country to go to Scotland because you can just do it from Street View. Google mounted a Street View camera on a boat to give people a 360-degree view of the 23-mile-long loch in all of its glory. And you can become an armchair monster hunter. Loch Ness is a lost world, but it's accessible through technology. And what should be here, of course. We all know the answer to that, said Adrian Shine, leader of the Loch Ness and Morar project. It's a sort of place that if there weren't any dragons, there really ought to be. I would love to go. Scotland is one of the few places on Earth I'd actually like to go and would maybe fly if I was heavily sedated. But I would want to go there because I believe I perhaps have some Scottish background in me. I can't say for sure, but I believe that I do. I would love to go over there with my Scottish brothers and really investigate the Loch Ness. That would be great, I think, whether I find Nessie or not. So anyway, that's awesome that we can do that now. So it's kind of scary too, though, kids, because you don't have to go and have an adventure. Let me just use this example. There would have been no Indiana Jones if he'd had to Google Street View. He'd have never had to leave his house. He just stayed home. Then we wouldn't have Indiana Jones. Chris, you know that Indiana Jones is a fictional character, right? Of course. Wait, what? Anyway, all right. Well, that's going to do it for the Weird Wire. And when I get back, I'm going to have my friend Jeremy Peck on. We will talk of many geek things, and hope you enjoy that. So stick around. We'll be back in just a few. Hi, folks. Chris here. You can reach me on Facebook by searching for The Big Show with Chris Meaux, on Twitter by searching for @BigShow, and contact me via email at thebigshow@gmail.com. Remember, show is spelled SHEAUX. Thanks for listening, and please share The Big Show with Chris Meaux with people you know. Well, we're back here, and I've got on the phone with me via the magic of Skype. I've got my good friend and fellow geek, I guess. Well, you wouldn't want to call him that to his face, but fellow enthusiast, fellow enthusiast of all things comic book and science fiction, Jeremy Peck, who...
How's it going? I'm doing all right, brother. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Thanks for being on the show this late. I know you get up early, and Jeremy and I have always had in common since we met. We've always been fans of comic books and Star Trek, Star Wars, and have always shared those experiences. Have gone to the movies together and talked about the comics. And that reminds me that I still have to get you those Punisher comics I told you I was going to give you, and I never did.
Well, those are the kind of things you promise, and
I know.
They're under lock and key, I'm sure, under bulletproof glass. And you tell me that, hoping I'll forget about it, so you never actually have to come through with it.
No, there's some of the few things in the nerd room that aren't in storage right now because we're trying to sell the house. So I had to put all of my action figures, most of them, in storage. It makes me sad. It's like I put my kid in storage. Okay, maybe it's not like that, but it's pretty hard.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing. That's one affinity that you and I did not share. Was the action figure collection.
No, you liked to take them and put them in weird poses. My action figures.
I would put them in very inappropriate positions when you weren't in the area.
That's right. And I like to just buy them and put them on the shelf and look at them. But we share everything else. And one thing that I think we had talked about probably a few months ago, last time I saw you, we talked a little bit about Man of Steel. Now, this past week, last week's show, I talked about the trailer for what I call Batfleck v. Not So Superman. And so it's obvious I'm not a fan. And I talked about it last week. They had released a Portuguese trailer, got leaked, so it forced Warner Brothers to release the full HD that they were planning to release anyway, like 2 days later. Mm-hmm. So the HD came out, and since then I've watched it a couple of times. And we'll talk about our feelings, our thoughts on it. But first of all, give everybody just a very brief secret origin. What's Jeremy Peck's secret origin of getting into this stuff? Like, how did you get into comics and all that kind of related stuff?
Oh man, how did I get into comics? Well, growing up with four brothers and mom and dad both working all the time, we had very little money for comic books and luxuries of that sort. I was always a fan, but I had a couple friends of mine that lived right down the street, and they were, they lived with their dad some of the times, and they would live with their mom some of the time, and their parents both pretty much lavished them with, a lot of gifts, particularly comic books. And every time we'd hang out, we'd ride our bikes to the, I guess it was like the Episeauxdes Drugs or something, drugstore, and go and they'd pick out half a dozen comic books, and they'd read them first, but they always had a stack of them. And I remember just picking them up and reading them. So it was kind of like, secondhand comic book reading, which I was more than happy to do.
Right.
But I just remember reading, the X-Men and, the Punisher. There was also comics that some of them were very funny. Like there was this one about this barbarian called Gru.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I don't know if you're familiar with Gru.
Gru the Wanderer,
but, Gru the Wanderer, yeah.
Yep.
It was, awesome stuff. It was just hilarious. And he was such a moron, and that just made for a great comic. And I remember they had some on the more serious side, which didn't really appeal to me, but there was a comic called Vietnam. And it was basically like a war comic, but that was just a little too serious. I was more into, Spider-Man and the X-Men and things like that. And one other little anecdote, I particularly remember reading about the issue with the costume change. Probably, what was that, 86, 88?
Yeah,
something like that, 1988.
Somewhere in there.
I remember seeing the cover, and he's in a black costume, and it just blew my mind. I was like, never had even fathomed Spider-Man being in anything other than the good old red and blue, you know?
Right.
And nowadays, that seems to be a kind of a common thing to switch around variations on a theme and have different types of costumes and whatnot, do with different functions, you know?
Yeah, it's a way to sell comics, you know. Well, come see this character's new look, and it lasts for, 5 months, and then it goes back to the original look in time for the movie, usually now, because it's all tied into that. Yeah, I remember that. Secret Wars was where they went to that alien world with the Beyonder, and that's where Spidey got his new costume. So you were reading, like, the same time I was, but 80s, mid-80s to through to the early 90s, which was a time of all the big events kind of started. You remember any, this would have been like 88, do you remember the death of Robin by any chance, where you could vote for Robin to live or die?
You know what? I do remember that. I also remember they weren't, these buddies of mine, you know, I really could only read what they bought. But here's the funny thing. I mean, we rode our bicycles everywhere. And we would go to, it might have been K&B or Episeauxdes Drugs, I forget. But we'd go and stand in front of the bookshelf, and we'd read comics in the drugstore for hours. Like, I mean, literally, like 3 or 4 hours. And I guess that was the poor kid's way of getting the comic, because, you know, we read them, and then we put it down, and we pick up another one, and we didn't have to buy it, you know?
Right.
And even then, I remember being very careful with it, so I didn't tear it or mar it or mess it up to where the shopkeep would insist that I pay for it or something like that, you know?
Right.
So, but the point that I'm coming to is that they weren't super big DC fans. They were pretty much all things Marvel.
So you stuck with the movies as they've come out. You followed all of those.
Oh, absolutely. Around 2000 came out with the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. And when they came out with X-Men, they came out with them about the same time. Mm-hmm. It was like seeing your childhood up on the big screen. I mean, it was incredible. And it's just, you know, it's amazing what they've been able to do with movies in the last 2 decades. Just the things they're able to do. I mean, my dream was to always see J.R. Tolkien on the screen, and to see an actual, you know, Lord of the Rings or Hobbit movie, and bam, here we are. You know, it's very doable, very achievable. And this is the ironic thing, and I'm going to bring this full circle with Batman versus Superman, or Batfleck versus Not So Superman, is that even though you kind of already know it's not going to live up to your expectations, I'm probably still going to go watch the damn thing.
Right.
You know, and I'll probably enjoy it. I mean, you know, the Man of Steel wasn't the best, but I enjoyed it, you know. The only thing I'm not a fan of is when they try to. I'm all about, hey, you know, we've already done Lex Luthor, and we've done the, you know, snoozing the rich old ladies and kicking the young dames around, and I mean, we've seen that. Gene Hackman did that. Well, let's go in another direction. You know, let's do something that hasn't. It's taking some of these franchises, 1 or 2 movies, just to set you up for where you want to be at the get-go.
The trailer for Batman v Superman, it's like he's taking him to court. Dawn of Justice. So what did you think of the trailer itself? Did you find a lot of people on the internet are making fun of it left and right? There's memes. There are parodies. What did you think of the trailer itself? I mean, it was a very brief thing.
At first, I was just I spent the first half of the trailer trying to figure out who was the narrator.
Right.
I was like, okay, is this the voice of the new Joker? Or and then I hear Holly Hunter's redneck accent in there, and I'm like, oh my gosh. You know,
she's a senator apparently in the movie, from what I've read online.
And must be from Tennessee, senator from Tennessee,
I guess,
or Alabama or something, Kentucky. But yeah, I totally was just trying to just kind of zone in and see what they were talking about, what that was all about. And the interesting thing is, the first thing that kind of threw me for a loop is that, you know, reading a lot of Superman comics, including the infamous Death of Superman, was that not once, I mean, yeah, Superman always had a huge fan club, a huge following, but at no point did I ever see Superman as a deity.
Right.
You know, as someone to have, and it's weird because he kind of fits all of the criteria of a supreme being, almost, you know, Fifth Element type person, someone that is tangibly a bridge between heaven and earth. And he fits the bill, but it's weird. I just never saw him like that. So when they showed that statue, which I don't know if it was supposed to be him flying or if it was knocked down, because it looked like it was, you know, listing, and then they had false god painted on it. I thought that was kind of weird. I was like, where are they going with this? You know, they're going to have a cult of people that, you know, worship Superman as their god or something, and they kept mentioning savior and absolute power. And that's one thing that, with the exception of Superman getting a hold of some you know, funky, odd color kryptonite, you know, he never really had to worry about that. You just always knew that he would do the right thing, that he would be fair, he'd be just, he would seek the truth. So I never really saw him as someone that would encourage and or tolerate people looking to him as a savior type figure.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when they've done that in the comics, very rarely, it's been a long time after he's already been known to be the good guy who always does the right thing. And then there have been occasions where he's had, you know, the cult, a Superman cult or something like that, but it hasn't been a big storyline, and it is something that he's not a fan of. He discourages it because he doesn't see himself that way. So, yeah, it's to me, it's a very heavy theme, and I'm not saying that a superhero movie can't be heavy, because I think all of those stories deal with something heavy at their core. But I just kind of wonder why all of these movies, and I know why, but all the Warner Brothers movies have to be heavy. You know, they have to be, we're going to deal with life and death and political power, and what would the world do if a real alien existed. And yes, I thought that was a real kind of bizarre way to go with it too.
I mean, I've always, in the comics, they've always shown idol worship, but never like faith worship. And that's where, to me, it's not that they crossed the line, but it definitely felt like a line was crossed. That's how I felt.
Right.
It struck a discord, you know. And they talk about, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely, something like that. But that's one thing. That's been one great thing about Superman, is that was never an issue. I mean, the man he's incorruptible.
Right.
You know. So just to assume that because he has this power, he's going to abuse it. Well, I mean, he proved that when he took out General Zod and the other and the other Kryptonians. So I don't know where that's coming from. The only thing I can think of is maybe, I know there's all different kind of colors of kryptonite, but maybe he gets a hold of some bad kryptonite rocks and he goes on this crazy trip where he switches personalities or something. What was it, Superman 3?
Right, that's right. Yeah.
Or was it Superman? No, Superman. Was it 2 or 3?
No, that was 3. Yeah, where the synthetic kryptonite makes him evil for a little while. He gets he gets the dark costume, and he goes and he flicks peanuts into the. That's a great scene. That's one of my favorite scenes in any movie. Evil Superman. It's just fun to watch. And then he has that battle with himself in the junkyard. And, that was a classic scene. Otherwise, the movie's kind of weird, kind of, bizarre. But that
very weird.
Cheesy and campy. What'd you think of Batman in this trailer? Did you think we see Ben Affleck in that suit, and he apparently has been working out a lot and fills out the suit. But did you think anything of the costume itself?
Well, I mean, looking at Ben Affleck, he's a big time actor and he's a good looking guy, but he just doesn't. I don't know. He just doesn't. He just doesn't say Batman to me. Kind of like George Clooney.
Right.
I mean, George Clooney just to me wasn't Batman.
Yeah.
It just I didn't buy it. And he fills out the suit and he uses the dark, cryptic voice. It even sounds, you can hear like electronic overtones in it, so it's almost like a synthetic voice.
Right.
I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yeah, I did.
But
yeah.
it's like electronically altered or enhanced, I guess, to disguise his voice. But I don't know. It's like he just doesn't seem not so much Batman, but doesn't seem Bruce Wayne.
Correct.
You know, he didn't appear to me as someone who would suffer through the tragedy of losing his parents and growing up alone and things like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people online have said you can't criticize Ben Affleck because look what happened with Heath Ledger. Nobody thought he would be good, and he was great. But Heath Ledger had a kind of like a craziness to him. I don't mean that he was really crazy. I mean you believed he could be crazy, even before he was the Joker. And the same is true with Michael Keaton because he did Beetlejuice, he did Clean and Sober, where he did this dark stuff. The same with Christian Bale. He did American Psycho. Val Kilmer even did some dark stuff, but Ben Affleck's never done anything dark. Even The Town, and I didn't see Argo, but I don't think Argo is dark. He to me, he's still the guy that was in what was the romantic comedy that he was in? Kevin Smith wrote it, where he's got a daughter and he falls in love with Liv Tyler. He's just, to me, he's a romantic comedy guy.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He doesn't strike me as the action hero. I mean, he's about as action hero as Paul Blart.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. I mean, these other actors, they showed their chops. Now, does that mean that Ben Affleck can't pull it off? No, I'm sure he can, but from that little snippet that they showed in the trailer, it wasn't very encouraging.
Right. Yeah, I agree. There wasn't a whole lot to go on for any of the characters. I mean, the only thing I really liked about the trailer was Jeremy Irons as Alfred, and because I like Jeremy Irons, so his reading of that line where he's talking to Bruce was the best thing. I mean, I think he's one of the best actors in that movie. And I think it's going to be kind of like, I said this on Facebook the other day. If I took a chunk of gold and I gave it to you, you'd say, "Oh wow, that's a chunk of gold. Hey." But then if I broke it in half, and you found out that it was a piece of crap that I had, dipped in gold, well, it loses its appeal. It still looks good, but what is it inside? And I feel like Man of Steel was the same in that it looked great, but when you looked inside it closer, it wasn't very good. And then I I thought, as far as the trailer, it looked amazing. I'm sure that it's going to look just fantastic, but it's not going to have anything inside of it that, say, Avengers or Iron Man.
Yeah, it looks really good, but it's empty calories.
Right, that's right.
I mean, look, those little zebra cakes look fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
But after I eat one of them, I want to gag myself because I feel like it just ate sweet plastic.
That's right. That's a good analogy. Yeah, those are horrible, but they look awesome.
It just leaves you, it looks appealing, but I think it's going to leave you wanting. Another thing that I think maybe Ben Affleck in the trailer, he's staring. Looks like he's staring at his bat suit.
Right.
But maybe he's just lamenting the fact, like looking at his suit, thinking, "Why in the hell did I cover up my suit with black duct tape?"
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it looks weird. It looks like exactly that. Like it's got some duct tape on it or something, and it's it's bizarre. And now that there's pictures of it all over the internet, and it just doesn't look that convincing.
If they were going for the let's make it look like he actually wears the thing and fights in it and gets it scuffed up, but it doesn't. If that's what they were going for, they didn't achieve it because it literally looks artificially aged,
right,
or worn. It doesn't look natural, or it looks more synthetic.
Yeah, it's almost got that kind of like that basketball texture that all these costumes have these days. Spider-Man's suit had that, and because I've looked at some of the pictures of it, and it's got this almost a honeycomb pattern on it, and so does Superman's suit in Man of Steel. And I don't know why they have to do that. I mean, I don't think tights is what anybody expects, but you look at like Under Armour, and it doesn't. I mean, I don't think it has to look any more detailed than that, but
but that I mean, think of Christopher Reeve's Superman.
Yeah,
I mean, it basically just was that. It just kind of looked like some tights. To me, the texture, it doesn't look like a uniform. It looks like a costume,
right?
And it looks like, I mean, Christopher Reeve. Yeah, he's Superman and he can fly through the sun, but the suit that he's wearing looks like you could tear it if it would get snagged on a branch. The one that the Man of Steel is wearing, well, hell, that looks like if he could fly, through a mountain and it wouldn't even scuff it.
Yeah.
I think it has a much more rugged look to it, tactical almost, not so much eye popping and colorful for the kids. It looks very tactical, very durable.
Yeah, and they did. I like that part of Man of Steel, how they explained where the suit, because if you notice, Zod and Jor-El and the other Kryptonians are wearing a version of that under their full armor that they wear. So it's kind of like their chainmail, I guess, under the armor. And it made sense as far as what they were explaining. As far as what they were trying to do with it, I just wonder if sometimes they go overboard. It looks like, like this Batman suit, I think, is just too far. Whereas in the Dark Knight, that was pretty much what you would expect a realistic Batman suit to look like,
Realistic, yeah. Not just one solid piece, but multiple pieces linked together that was functional yet tactical.
Right.
But they could go a la Green Lantern and CG the whole thing. So I'm glad they're not at least not doing that.
Yeah, that's true. That would be awful, especially for Batman. He doesn't need. I mean, I'm sure his armor that he wears when he goes to fight Superman is going to be CG, but his regular suit, at least it's the gray and black. We finally get the comic book colors in a movie. You think about it, this never happened. It's always been all black. So, that is a kind of a cool thing. It looks like the comic book suit, but the detailing, yeah, it's just off. Well, so how would you say you'd rate this if you had to give this trailer an A through F grading scale? What would you give it?
I would probably give it a C, just because they gave enough information and enough tidbits to interest me, but also disinterest me.
Right.
And so I'm neither loving it nor hating it. So I think I'd have to give it like probably a solid C. If there's something in between C plus and C minus, that's what I would give it. Yeah, I think it's still going to be interesting, but I don't know. As of right now, I'm trying not to have really any expectations of it. So that way, if I watch it and it's better than I anticipate, then it's a plus, and at least I won't be like, well, this was a waste of time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go see it or not. I'm at that point where after Man of Steel, I said I wouldn't see any sequel to that movie, but it may just be one of those things where I have to see it just to see how bad I think it'll be, or how much it falls short of what I would hope it would be. And I'm a member of a group on Facebook called Boycott Batman v Superman. So all these guys, and all these guys are saying we're not going to see it. And I'm not saying I don't believe them, but there's a, you love these characters, you grow up with them, and you kind of want to go see anything they're in just to say, hey, I saw it, So I don't know. I might wait on video, but I'll probably slip into that theater at some point to see it anyway. But at this point,
I'm definitely not going to see it the first weekend it comes out.
No,
I'm thinking when they cut off the morning shows of it, and they just have like the 7 and 9 o'clock. Right. That might be why I go see it.
Yeah. When there's only maybe 2 people there. I agree.
Yeah,
we can go see it at that time. Yeah, because I'm not going to go to the midnight showing of that. It's not worth it, I don't think. Well, brother, thank you so much for being on the show. I know it's late, and you got an early start tomorrow, and have you back on the show. Hopefully we can do some more geek speak.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm all about it. I think that'd be great. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for having me, and looking forward to doing it again.
All right. Well, thank you. And again, folks, this was Jeremy Peck, good friend of mine here, talking about recent geek news that happened this past week. So we'll take a break. When we get back, we will wrap up the show.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of The Big Show with Chris Meaux. This week's episode, I want to take this time, first of all, to thank Jeremy for being on the show. Really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm going to have him on again frequently, hopefully. I also want to take this time, because I don't know that I say it enough, but I want to say thank you to all of the Big Show underwriters, as I call them, those who supported this show financially and made it possible with their donations to purchase the equipment that is used to produce The Big Show with Chris Meaux every week. I want to thank you all for that. You know who you are if you're listening, and thank you so much for making this dream of mine happen. I want to thank all of my listeners, all of those who've gotten in touch with me through social media and let me know their thoughts or have shared links to the show. Thank you for that. And remember that I am on iTunes. The Big Show with Chris Meaux is on iTunes. Remember also the official YouTube channel of The Big Show with Chris Meaux, which is called Big Show Video, Videaux, is on YouTube. I'm going to have new content there this week. I'm going to demonstrate, and I want to thank Roy Pettifees, friend of the show, for giving me this idea. I am going to demonstrate how to use the new Apple, and I call it new, it's relatively new, the new Apple podcast app to find The Big Show with Chris Meaux, to add it, to subscribe, and then all you have to do is check that app, and every week, new episodes uploaded, you press play, and you're in business. So I'm going to have that up on Big Show Video this weekend. Thanks again to everybody for listening. Next week, another exciting episode of The Big Show with Chris Meaux. Have a great week. Be safe. Here in Lafayette, we are having the internationally acclaimed Festival International that's going on. All of you going out to that this weekend, please have a great time, but also a safe time. No drinking and driving. Be sure that you avail yourself of the free driving opportunities that are out there where people will take you home safely to keep all people safe. Have a great weekend, the rest of you as well, and I'll talk to you next weekend. Until then, remember, leave the places you go and the people you meet better than they were when you found them. I lie. My bad. I ain't no doctor, but I'm gonna tell you, I don't think that's good. And welcome to this week's episode of The Big Show with Chris Meaux. I am he who has already now previously been mentioned, Chris Meaux, and I'm coming to you from the Big Show production compound, a.k.a. Big Show Studios, a.k.a. the third bedroom in our bedroom. No, the third bedroom here in our home in beautiful South Louisiana, specifically Lafayette, the hub city, the heart of Cajun country. It is Friday, May the 8th, 2015, and I hope you are doing as great as I am feeling. And I'll tell you this, kids, because I always like to give the Chris Meaux medical update, or as I like to call it, the CMMU. Those are just the first letters of every word in that statement. I love to do that because I know people are going, man, can't wait to hear how Chris Meaux's doing with his medical history today. I'm doing okay, kids. I do have some thyroid issues, or perhaps better to called issues, if you want to sound obnoxious, and what's the other word? Obnoxious, and also what else? What's the other one? Starts with a P. Pretentious. That would be a good one. And those are my middle names. So Chris, obnoxious, pretentious, Reynolds, Meaux. So Reynolds, there's no S. Anywho, moving back to the topic at hand, I just got back from the doctor. In fact, not an hour ago. I did have to have my blood taken. That's always fun. And, it's that kind of thing there where you're having that checked out and they're checking your thyroid level. So I felt kind of tired. I don't have much of a metabolism. I've had some weight gain. I've had some hair thinning. I've had some dry skin and the fatigue. And that could all be part of being 39. Well, he's old. That old timer. He's practically dead there. What? But I'm getting older. In fact, just when I bend over to pick up something, this is what the sound I make. That's right. I make that sound. What's that, honey? You want me to walk across the room there about 2 to 3 feet away and get the remote? It's horrible. It is, and sometimes even when I go upstairs, this is the noise. This is the noise that my knees make now. Isn't that lovely? That's what my knees. As I'm walking up and downstairs, you'll hear that noise. So that can't be good. I ain't no doctor, but I'm gonna tell you, I don't think that's good. Anywho, so but I'm in a good mood. I've been drinking a lot of coffee, so for about the last 4 or 5 hours. No, I haven't. But I'm in a good mood. I'm doing great. I didn't do a show last week for various reasons. Yeah. That's a shame. And the reason was simply, kids, because I had a lot of stuff going on, and I did plan on doing my review of
of Avengers Age of Ultron last week because, of course, it came out last Thursday night, and I went, of course, to the nerd viewing, the geek peek. Waited. I'll talk about that more later, but I won't go off on a tangent about how bad the theater experience was. But I will say that I did go see the early showing, 7:20 in the evening. I'm too old to do those damn midnight showings. I just can't. What's that? You want me to stay up after midnight? I can't do it, damn it. I don't know what's happening. But I will. That'll be this week. The main segment for this week's show will be my review, brief, spoiler-free review of Avengers Age of Ultron. So stick around for that. That's coming up at the end of the show, or again, later in the show. So, excuse me. I still have some gradu in my throat. It's in my throat. It's stuck in there. I'll have some stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like some gradu. It's actually not gradu, Cajun French term for stuff. I think it is like just junk. This is probably a little. I would think a little phlegm, some reflux, a little bile. That's right. That's what's stuck in my throat, kids. Yeah. So, but anyway, so if I clear my throat a lot, apologize. Now, what am I, Yoda? Apologize now. I do for frequently throat clearing. What is happening? Apparently, Yoda having a small stroke. I'm not sure what's happening, but I'm in a good mood and I'm peppy here. I'm feeling a little peppy here. That's George Bush Sr. Gonna do it here, gonna do it there, gonna do it everywhere. It's bad. Okay. Let's move on, shall we? Let's go ahead. We know what we're going to do, kids. We're going to take a break. When we get back, we're going to jump right into this week's monologue. Stick around. We're back, and by we, I, of course, mean me and the many voices in my head. Yes, the voices. Last week, I lie, my bad. It wasn't last week, it was like 2 weeks ago. Oh, my Lord, somebody's calling me with a 504 area code. You know what I have to say to them? Screw you! I don't know who you are calling me, so bye-bye. Anyway, what was I saying? 2 weeks ago, we got the second teaser trailer for Star Wars: The Force Awakens. And still, it's all I can think about, mainly that and a few other things, but very excited. We also got the trailer for Season 2 of Star Wars Rebels, which is a great show. And in it, it sounds like, I know they got James Earl Jones to come back and do Darth Vader's voice, but it sounds like they also got Sir Ian McDiarmid, who, of course, played Senator Palpatine in the prequels, and Darth Sidious played the Emperor in the original films. And there's a line in there that is the Emperor talking. It's got to be him. And I love that evil voice. He says, Lord Vader. And the Emperor is one of my favorite characters in all of fiction because he's so evil. But Ian McDiarmid made him there's a fun there. Even though he's evil and a bad guy, he's just fun. He just gets the best lines and like unlimited power, which I'm doing a disservice, but that's from Revenge of the Sith. Anyway, the reason I brought that up is because of the voices. So sometimes in my head, I have his voice in my head, and it's pretty fun, and also just a little scary. Well, speaking of scary, as you've probably heard in the news, there have been some recent security issues over at the White House. And, there was a guy, I think, tried to get into the White House. There was a guy there that I honestly just heard security problems at the White House, and that's all I really paid attention to. I didn't read the full news story. But you know what? It's scary. It is scary, no matter what you think of our president or don't think of our president, in whoever it is that's president and all the other people that work there and the family of the president want him to be safe. safe. They're already targets for all sorts of attacks, and you want them to be safe, of course, especially children. And so it's scary. However, new security measures are being added, so that's good news. And what they're doing is they're adding another level of steel spikes to the steel spikes that are already there. This is true. And they're doing that to, have another extra level of security. And the hope of the Obama administration is this, that these extra spikes, these extra measures, will keep assailants from getting in. And it's the hope of everyone else that these steel spikes will help to keep Joe Biden in. Oh, that's the hope, that he won't be able to get out of there. Right, Ed? Because we don't want to see or hear from Joe Biden, right? Hi-oh! That's right. Keep him behind the spikes. All right. Moving on to the realm of science. Researchers have found, or they've done some research and they've released their findings. An oxygen-depleted ocean played a huge role in the prehistoric mass extinction that occurred at the end of the Triassic period. That was millions of years ago, right? Now, after reading this new research, Larry King immediately took to Twitter and gave his take on it. He said, "I remember that. It was a real bitch. I couldn't get shampoo out of my hair or off my hands." So, yeah, because he's old. That's right. He's an old fella. Yeah, he's been around for a while. And the joke there, it's a running gag on this show. Anytime I read something about prehistoric or ancient findings or scientific discoveries, I always make a Larry King joke about it. Yeah, because he's old. Anyway, all right, moving on. Now, this is also a true news story right here. A male thief who dressed as a woman, all right, to rob a bank in Florida was captured on the bank's security cameras, which you got to think they're going to have cameras, duh. Now, the FBI is, of course, investigating, and they report that the investigation is ongoing, but they don't expect the investigation to drag. So they expect it to not drag on because, it was a guy dressed like a woman. So, all right, now another true story. I tell you, I'm not making up any of this, kids. None of it. It's all true. A Rhode Island home was broken into and vandalized by a turkey. This happened. The bird entered through a window, and it managed to somehow, these turkeys, they're a menace to society. It broke in, somehow managed to turn on a bathroom faucet, causing a flood, damaging the bathroom and the couple's garage who owned the home. They also found, listen to this, this is awful, turkey poop was found everywhere, along with a note that read, "Give thanks for that, bitches." So this one angry turkey trying to get revenge, it sounds like. I don't know. I'm going to fire the writer, whoever wrote that. Now, researchers in Glasgow. I don't know how to say it. I can do a Scottish accent, but I don't know if it's Glasgow, Anyway, researchers in Glasgow, Scotland, have created a robot that can sort and fold laundry. How about that? Now, the researchers also plan on adding a voice chip that will simulate a woman complaining about having to do laundry all the time to add to the realism of the robot. So that should make it more appealing for people that, want to buy that robot. All right. Finally, still staying in the realm of technology, Apple Watch owners who don't have any real-life friends, in other words, friends in there that they know who also own Apple Watches, they're using Reddit to find fellow, quote, lonely hearts, unquote, that are also eager to connect with new friends to test some of the watch's communication features. Because if you don't have a friend or a relative or an acquaintance that owns one of these, you can't really compare notes about how it works, right? Now, so that's good news. The bad news about this, though, is that this could lead to people who own Apple Watches reproducing. So we wouldn't want more of those people around, right? Because, they're obnoxious. No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry. If you have an Apple Watch, I apologize. That was a joke. And the writer I see him right now. I'm looking at him, and he's been fired. You're fired. Okay. So anyway, well, kids, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Big Show Monologue, and we'll take a little break. When I get back, it'll be time for a double feature, a doubled up because I didn't do a show last week, edition of the Big Show Geek Peek. Lots of cool news there. Stick around. And we're back, and this week's edition of the Big Show Geek Peek, if I can say it, is a longer one because last week I didn't do a show. But you know what? I'm going to just kind of gloss over a few of these news items, and you can go look them up there. Just Google. Last week, man, you know what? I can't believe this happens, kids. This happens when you're staff, because I have a dedicated staff that is supposed to do research for me, and my research staff puts all this together. They send it to me, and sometimes they forget. They will forget to give me the information. That happens. So I'll get, excuse me. I will get my information for this these stories, but they'll forget to put something in. So okay, I had to look this up. I want to go. Okay, can you get on the email or whatever you want to do? One of the get on the tweet box or the my face, whatever the hell it's called, and let those folks know they're fired. Can you do that? Okay, thanks, pal. Anyway, Avengers: Age of Ultron has already grossed $191.3 million. It makes it the second best domestic debut ever, and it is short of the $207.4 million haul of the original Avengers, and it had been projected to debut between $190 million and $230 million. And the predictions are it's going to continue to do well this weekend, right? Its second weekend is always big, usually for these movies, because word of mouth. People who didn't go see it, they wanted to avoid the crowds, will go and see it. And I think my review will hopefully help some of you who are perhaps on the fence to decide to hopefully go see it. It really is a great movie. We'll talk more about that in the review. So that is that's the current box office there, $191.3 million. Nothing to sneeze at. A lot of controversy made over Joss Whedon, and a lot of feminists had some controversial takes on the way that Black Widow was portrayed. She was the only female member of the team of the Avengers, and there was much was made of the way she is portrayed in this film. I think it's hogwash, but you can read up about that. That's in the news. Excuse me. Also, Joss Whedon, who directed the film and also wrote it, co-wrote it. He's also received some flack for he's decided to close down his Twitter account, not so much because of the foolishness from these critics, but also because he wants to get back to writing. He's leaving the Avengers franchise with this film and is moving on to do some of his own creator-owned stuff, which I think is great. He of course created Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I believe Dollhouse, Angel, which was a spinoff of Buffy, and my favorite of his works, Firefly, and the film Serenity. And I would love to see him go back and do some more work in that, or create something completely new. So he left Twitter to do that, to get back to writing. And you got to have no distractions to write. As a writer myself, I can attest, I wrote 80 pages of a novel, and then once our first daughter was born, that was gone. That was it. Because life, happens, and you've got to make adjustments. And so that's what he's doing. So can't wait to see what that leads to, because I love the work of Joss Whedon. Don't think it's always, he's not always hitting them out of the park, but for the most part, it's really good stuff. Whedon did reveal a couple of things. He revealed this past week that he wanted and actually film scenes with Loki. They had to be cut for time. He also revealed this. This is kind of spoilery, but not really. He revealed that he wanted both Captain Marvel, who is a super heroine in the Marvel Universe. You may not have heard of her. Carol Danvers is her name. He wanted her in the film. He also wanted Spider-Man because he's now part of the Marvel Universe, right? The Sony deal. We talked about that a couple episodes back. And the studio said no. They said, there's not enough time, and we want to wait and do this a little more. We want to do a build-up to it. So he was not able to do that. Now, this week, cast information and a synopsis for Civil War, which is the next Marvel Universe movie. It's the beginning officially of Phase 3, and that's going to happen next summer. Actually, I think it's next March, was revealed. So this is huge. And a lot of people are calling this movie not Captain America 3, but rather Avengers 2.5. And you know, Cap's always, without getting into a big thing in the history of Captain America was a Golden Age hero who's created a few years after Superman and Batman. He was really the premier Marvel Golden Age character in a lot of ways. Because, of course, he was created as not a propaganda character, but he was created as a way to show support. In some ways, he was created as a way to show support for the war effort. But, you know, he's created before we entered the war. And Cap was really a comment on America and its strengths at the time. And so, you know, he disappeared for a lot of reasons I won't get into. A lot of them are political, stuff that went on with the comic book industry that almost destroyed the comic book industry in the 50s. And Cap kind of disappeared along with other superheroes. And it wasn't until the 60s when the Marvel Universe was born, the real Marvel Universe, what we think of today as the Marvel Universe, that Cap was resurrected. He was found in the ice. And who found him? The Avengers. Okay, they had already formed, and the team then, of original Avengers consisted of Thor, the Hulk, Ant-Man, who's getting his movie in July, the Wasp, and Iron Man. They found Cap in the ice, and he pretty much quickly became the leader. So I look at it as you almost have to have some Avengers in Cap's movies because he's tied to the Avengers. It's part of the history of the character in a lot of ways. So I feel like it's not Avengers 2.5, but I can see how some people say that. I personally think that's great because I loved Avengers 2, and I can't wait to see where the story goes. So I'm not complaining. Here's the official cast list, all right? We are going to see, of course, Chris Evans back as Cap, Scarlett Johansson, that means Black Widow will be in the film, Falcon will be in the film, Paul Bettany, who plays the Vision, he will be in there, Don Cheadle, War Machine, and Elizabeth Olsen, who plays Scarlet Witch. They will be in Captain America 3, which is Captain America or Civil War. Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man and Jeremy Renner as Hawkeye will also be in the film. And Chris Hemsworth, Thor, Mark Ruffalo, Hulk, will not be in the film. And as of press time, Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury, Kobe Smulders, Maria Hill are also not in the movie, at least not for now. Other names that we already knew before this news release came out this week. Sebastian Stan, who plays Bucky Barnes in The Winter Soldier, is in the movie. Frank Grillo, who was in Captain America, The Winter Soldier, he played Crossbones. Now, Crossbones was not named, but he was the bad guy he was the Hydra agent in S.H.I.E.L.D. who was leading the attack on Cap. He will be in this film. Emily Van Camp, Sharon Carter, Agent 13. She will also be in in Civil War. And her series, sadly, for my wife and others who are fans, was canceled. Revenge got canceled, I think, last week or the week before. And also a new addition, Paul Rudd, who is playing Ant-Man in July, is going to be in this film. And Black Panther makes his first appearance in the Marvel Universe, the Marvel character, and he's a longtime Avenger. And he's played by Chadwick Boseman. So he will be in there, and I find this very interesting. William Hurt, who was in The Incredible Hulk, will return as General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. Now, that's interesting that they're bringing him back. Great actor, and I'm glad to see him. However, Thunderbolt Ross in the comics, this is I don't know that this is going to play in the movie at all, but in the comics, he, of course, his daughter, or the father of, I'm going to forget her name, Betty Ross, who Bruce Banner was in love with, and he eventually becomes the Red Hulk and leads a team called the Thunderbolts, who are kind of like
anti-Avengers. Will that happen in the movie? I don't know. But I think it's interesting that he's being included when he's not been seen since The Incredible Hulk. And that came out, if you recall, same year as Iron Man. It was really before anybody knew if these movies were going to take off and lead to bigger stuff. So we'll see what that. I find that very interesting. Here's the official plot synopsis of Captain America: Civil War. Civil War picks up where Avengers Age of Ultron left off as Steve Rogers leads the new team of Avengers in their continued efforts to safeguard humanity. After another international incident involving the Avengers results in collateral damage, political pressure mounts to install a system of accountability and a governing body to determine when to enlist the services of the team. The new status quo fractures the Avengers while they try to protect the new world from a new and nefarious villain. I know who that villain is. I'm not going to say because of spoilers. He is a classic Cap villain and Avengers villain, so it makes sense that they would be bringing him in. And Martin Freeman, who of course played Bilbo Baggins, he's also John Watson in the excellent BBC Sherlock. He has been added to the cast. No news on who he's playing, so that should be interesting. Great actor. Can't wait to see that. Moving on to the realm of X-Men, which is currently owned. The rights are owned by 20th Century Fox, which is why, in my opinion, those movies have been middling. Some of them great, not the others not that great. Hugh Jackman has officially announced, it's been confirmed, his final appearance as Wolverine will be in Wolverine 3, which I believe is coming out in either next year or the year after. And there are rumors that after X-Men Apocalypse, which is coming out also, I believe, either next year or the year after. After that, it is rumored that there's going to be a clean reboot of the X-Men universe. I'm going to give you my 2 cents on that, kids. I don't think they're going to do just a clean reboot. I have a feeling that 20th Century Fox is seeing what Sony's worked out with Marvel, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least if 20th Century Fox goes to Disney and says, look, we want a piece of that pie. Let's make a deal like you did with Sony with Spider-Man, and we'll give you control of the X-Men back as long as we have a say in it and we split some of the money. That would be great for everybody because it means you could have Wolverine in the Avengers, which in the comics, he is currently a member of the Avengers. It also means we get better X-Men movies and they could all cross over. And I'm hoping, and I hate to say this, new Fantastic Four movie is also out this summer. I'm not going to see it. I'm against it completely. It might be good. It's based on the Ultimate version of the Fantastic Four. I'm hoping it bombs only because I want to see the Fantastic Four brought back into the Marvel Universe in the same way. So we'll see. 20th Century Fox, of course, also owns the rights to them. They purchased the rights years ago. Now, a color picture. Last week I was going to mention this, but didn't do a show. Color picture of Batfleck was revealed. I personally think it's great. Let me say this. The costume looks great because it's black and gray, which are the traditional Batman comic book colors. It's nice to not see an all-black suit, finally, in the movies. What do I dislike about it? Everything else. I think the texture looks weird. It looks like it's covered in duct tape, which if you listened to my talk with Jeremy Peck last week about the trailer for the movie Batfleck v Not So Superman, then you know that I didn't care for it. And he said it looked like duct tape. I agree. I do like the black. I like the cowl, the mask. I think it looks great. Everything else, nah. I think also that it looks great as a drawing, which makes sense. Promotional art for Batman v Superman was released, showing Superman, showing Batfleck in both his armored look that he's going to, I guess, use to fight to make Superman bleed. Ooh, because everybody wants to see that. And he's also his traditional uniform, and it looks great because it's a drawing. And it doesn't look great as a 3D suit. It also happens to not look great because Ben Affleck is wearing it, in my opinion. Finally, now this doesn't surprise me in the least, and I think it's only going to get worse. Behind-the-scenes doubts and shakeups have happened at Warner Brothers in the last few weeks. There was a cool reception online, social media, from people in the biz about the Batman and Batman versus Superman trailer. Wonder Woman has changed directors, and there are reports from the writers of this film, the Wonder Woman film, that the writers were being called in to throw shit, and this is a direct quote, so pardon my French,
quote, throwing shit on the wall to see what sticks, unquote. This is why I don't think these movies will succeed. Not because they aren't Marvel, but because they're not being smart like Marvel, getting people from the comic books who know these characters and love them to sit down in a room and say, here's a plan, and we're going to stick to this plan, and here are the story beats. We're going to do this over a series of movies, and here, get people who know and love this stuff, who are going to follow our directions, and let's make these movies this way. And that's why I think these movies will suck, because what Warner Brothers is doing is they're not getting people who love comic books, they're getting people they already have on their bankroll, directors and writers, to make these movies, just because we already know them. Warner Brothers wants, as some Hollywood studios do, they want a sure thing. And they think, oh, The Dark Knight was a sure thing. Let's make all of our movies dark like The Dark Knight, even if they aren't dark characters. And then secondly, oh, well, we already know these people. They've made movies for us. Let's get them to make these movies. It's going to bite them on the butt. And I predict, you heard it here first, I predicted that in the next 5 to 10 years, something is going to change, maybe sooner, with these movies. I just think they're not going to do as well as Warner Brothers hopes. That's my opinion. Sipping a little agua here. Star Wars Rebels returns on June 20th. Great show, as I mentioned earlier. And it's going to return with a 1-hour movie called Siege of Lothal. James Earl Jones, the legend, who of course voiced Darth Vader, is going to voice Darth Vader, who is a main character in the show going forward in the second season. And it's huge. He's going to be throughout the season doing the voice. He sounds great. You can watch the trailer. I'll have a link in the show notes. And you can also, if you get the Disney XD television app or for your phone or whatever device, you can watch season 1 of Rebels. Great show for all ages. Supergirl is getting a TV series. It was released finally, or revealed, that the show has been ordered for a full series run, or a first season run, and the trailer is going to be released on May 14th. I'll have a link to the picture of the costume. I think it looks great. It's very modest, and I'm glad that she doesn't look like a hoe. Super hoe, you know. So I'm glad it's a show my girls will hopefully be able to watch, and they'll have Supergirl, you know. Now, going into super news in the comics, and I just want to do this very briefly in case some of you have read this. It's about 2 weeks old as far as news goes, but it's still being talked about a lot. You may have read it in mainstream news in a newspaper or website. Superman in the comics. First of all, there are some changes going on. Batman is now a guy in a suit of armor. Okay, I'm not going to say who the guy is. I know who it is, but I won't give it away in case somebody wants to go read these comics. Bruce Wayne, nobody knows where he is, presumed dead. And now Superman, a few months back, got a new power called the Super Flare, and he uses up all of his solar energy in one burst. That's very destructive. It's like a big explosion, except when he does that, he loses his powers for 24 hours, and he's weak until he gets them back at full strength. He is now wearing T-shirts, jeans, has a buzz cut, rides a motorcycle, and reports are that in this new take on Superman, he's going to be addicted to this new power, so he's going to use this power to be more human, because he wants to know what it's like to be human. Let me say why I think that's a poppycock, for lack of using a curse word. Superman grew up, Clark Kent grew up knowing nothing other than I'm human, but I have these abilities. He knows what it's like to feel human for a good portion of his life. So that's just a really bad rationale, in my opinion, to make these changes. I don't think it's permanent, but I still think it's dumb. Also, this I think is even worse. Lois Lane will not only learn that Clark Kent is Superman, she's also going to reveal this to the world. So, hey, even though they're not dating anymore, they're not married, they're not close, you know, he's in the comics now, Superman's dating Wonder Woman. Lois, I don't think, would ever do this, but she's going to reveal to the world, hey, Clark Kent's Superman. Bye-bye, secret identity. Horrible. I think it's terrible. That's just my 2 cents. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you updated. All right, that's going to do it for the Big Show Geek Peek. When I get back, we're going to take a look at a very brief Weird Wire. Stick around. Now, Big Show Weird Wire for this week. One story, it's very brief, but it's definitely newsworthy. A few months back, there was there was news of a documentary being released called Kodachrome. Kodachrome was a type of slide, like a photo slide. And these people who, one of them claims to be a UFO researcher, he got his hands on these slides that dated back to the 40s, and then found a slide that had what he thought it was. He thought, upon looking at it, that it was not a human, that it was an alien body. And he and some other people were going to do an online and a live event in Mexico, which seemed strange to everybody who heard it, but they were doing it in Mexico because it was cheaper to produce it there. And they were going to show the picture of the slide. They were going to show the slide in full quality so that you could take a look at it. Well, this happened on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. It was planned to be this big media event. Very few media outlets talked about it because just looking at the blurry image that was released before the official full release, a lot of people said this looks like a child mummy. There's an enlarged head, a small body. There are what appear to be signs like you would see in a museum display. Once the picture was released, there was huge backlash on the internet because a lot of people feel cheated out of their money. You had to pay for the online reveal, like if you wanted to see the live stream. Some people actually traveled out to Mexico, watched this live. A lot of people are unhappy. When the full image was released, the high def version or clearer image, people immediately began to dissect it, as the internet is wont to do. And what did they find? That it in fact does look like a mummy. And they're tearing this picture apart now, trying to prove this is not an alien. So it's sad when this happens. I, of course, believe in the existence of UFOs and possibly alien, extraterrestrial life. And this sets things back. No wonder people think anyone who believes in this stuff is crazy, because here's another huckster who just wanted to make money. And it's very sad. So anyway, that's it for the Weird Wire. That story, I'm going to have a link to the picture and a news story about it. You can read more if you like in the show notes. When I get back, my spoiler-free review of Avengers Age of Ultron. Stick around. And I'm back. Here we go, Age of Ultron review. I'm going to give it an overall grade, okay, based on one viewing. I haven't had a chance to see it again, but I have had a chance to let it kind of percolate in my mind and do some reading, other reviews. I've kind of read the plot synopsis again online just to kind of refresh my memory on some things. I'm going to give this movie, this might sound harsh, but I feel it's fair. I'm going to give it a B+. That's based on one viewing. Another viewing might change it either way. Might go higher, might go lower. I honestly don't think it'll go lower on another viewing. Might go higher. I wouldn't give it. I have to go with B+ though. Okay. So just as a caveat, as a warning, that's based on one viewing and a little time. Like I gave myself some time to think about it. Let me drink some more water here, kids. Pardon me. I will say this, though, before I get into the review. First of all, spoiler-free, so no worries. When I leave one of these Marvel movies, doesn't matter which one, I always feel like a kid. And I will say that with no shame. You feel peppy and you feel excited and you feel like, wanting to have an adventure and you feel bright and colorful. And I left the movie excited and thrilled and was just like, man, I just saw a really fun, great superhero movie. It made me feel like comic books make me feel, which is why I love comics. That is what a comic book movie should do. So all of this other stuff that I'm going to mention that gives it a B+, to me is not nitpicking because it's a review, but at the end of the day, the feeling this movie gives me automatically is an A. But I'm going a little less on feeling and more on a review. And that has to be a little more objective, of course. And so, you know what? What does the movie make you feel? That's really what I think you should grade at the end of the day. And it made me feel like a kid. And I saw stuff in this movie that just made me so thrilled because I only ever thought I'd see it in comics, and to see some of these scenes, that stuff with Cap's shield, it was just like, this is a comic book come to life. Amazing stuff. So went to see Man of Steel, felt depressed, felt dour, felt sad, and that's what I think is the big problem with any movie, not just Man of Steel, but any movie that decides to take all of this and make it depressing and make it dark and make it real. I think that's where it misses the boat, in my opinion. When you do that with a superhero movie, unless it's even Batman, I think you can go too far. People leave the theater and they're like, oh, I felt better before I went in. And I think a superhero movie, depending on the superhero, but for the most part, there should be some fun. And you should feel like you got transported to this fantastical place. And I felt that with this movie. All right, so the good. I'm going to do the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, the action and the special effects were amazing. As always with these movies, have yet to be underwhelmed by a Marvel comic movie. Well, I should say the ones done by Marvel Studios. The other ones, like the X-Men movies, some of the special effects have been kind of weak and the action lame. The Ghost Rider movies are a good example of some of the special effects have been a little off. I'm talking about Marvel Studios. I saw stuff in there. You're going to see stuff in this movie if you go see it you've never seen in a movie, much less a comic book movie before, ever, or vice versa, is what I meant to say. You've never seen in a comic book movie, much less a movie. There's stuff, and it's just amazing. I don't want to give anything away, so that's all I'm going to say. You're going to leave, you're going to be in awe saying, wow, I've never seen that before. That's also what I think a comic book movie should do in 2015. Ultron, as a character, he's full CGI, and I think he is extremely believable. He looks like he should. I read a criticism today, in fact, that someone said he should not have been as expressive, and this isn't a spoiler, that he should have, in the comics, Ultron is kind of like Iron Man's face. In other words, he's got a faceplate and his mouth doesn't move and his eyes don't move. In the movie, though, he has a fully moving face, all right? And it gives him more life. Some people have said he maybe would have been scarier had he just had the faceplate. I agree with that, but I don't think it takes away. I don't think it makes it less realistic or good that he had a moving face. I think James Spader, man. James Spader has always, to me, just been so cool. I was always kind of scared of him in the 80s when I'd see him in a movie. Even if he wasn't playing a bad guy, I always thought, man, this guy's just, there's something not cool about him, like he's evil. So he does a great job at playing Ultron, doing the voice, and hilarious. Like, I didn't expect this character to be that funny. I thought he'd be menacing and evil. Very funny, though. So that was great. The performances from the rest of the cast are the usual with these people. We know them by now. They felt like old friends. It was fun. They did a great job. They really brought to life some of the stuff that, as an actor, I'm sure is hard to do, and they did a great job with it. Excuse me. The story is great. I thought it was solid. It was a solid story. It builds nicely on the previous movie. So if you've seen the other Phase 2 movies, in other words, the stuff after the first Avengers, it really does pay off. If you didn't, though, you can still enjoy this movie. You don't have to remember, oh, what happened in Iron Man 3 and what happened in Thor 2. And I don't remember Winter Soldier that much. So you're not going to be disserved. But if you have kept up, as we diehard fans have, there's a lot there that you're going to enjoy. Each character gets a moment to shine. That's so hard with a team movie. That was what I thought was a problem with all the X-Men movies. They seemed like they were really Wolverine in the X-Men. Not everybody got a moment to shine. Here in the Avengers, both the first movie and this one, every character gets a moment that you're like, that moment tells you, hey, that's that character. That's true to who they are. And I thought that was really good. About this movie. I thought that's so hard, and I'm really hoping that going forward, the Russos, who are taking over as directors, can really continue to do that. So that was great. That was the good. A sip on some more agua here, por favor. A little gurgling there. Here we go with the bad. Now, understand that I'm doing the good, the bad, the ugly. Bad doesn't mean terrible. That'll be ugly. This is not a deal breaker, as in don't see the movie, it sucks. It is just stuff that I thought, could have been better. Some of the dialogue was off, whether it was spoken by Ultron, whether it was spoken by some of the other characters. I just kind of thought, it just doesn't seem right. Either it was too light for this movie and what was going on, or it was just out of character, or a joke was taken too far. That might have happened. There were a lot of quips a lot of little zingers from Ultron. I thought, that's more of... But I will say this, and I don't want to give anything away. There's a reason that Ultron is very much like a character who usually is the guy making the quips, so it kind of fits, but I thought it went too far at some time. Tony Stark. Oh, he's kind of the heart of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. His motivations in this movie are they're weak. I'm going to just say that they're weak. I know what his motivations are, and they make sense from a certain standpoint, but I just thought I didn't believe it like I wanted to believe it. And I think the movie failed in that regard. He doesn't face much criticism at the end of the movie. I won't say why. He should receive some criticism. You see it and you'll know. I thought that he kind of got off scot-free at the end. And I'm not talking about add another 30 minutes to show. I just thought there should have been some kind of... The Iron Man movies have done a really good job of, if a guy built a suit of armor that was a giant weapon, what would the government think about it? The Captain America movies have dealt with that too, by kind of building on that premise of what do we do with these superpowered people? And now you have this movie, and at the end of what happens, or after what happens in this movie, I would have liked to have seen some government agents brought in, not S.H.I.E.L.D., but that maybe some senators or the president talking to Tony Stark and saying, you've got to answer for this. That, I think, will play out in Civil War, but I would have liked to have seen a seed of it planted in this movie, and you don't. Finally, the movie feels, this is my biggest criticism, okay, even though this isn't in the ugly, maybe it should be in the ugly. The movie feels like it's setting up future movies and at certain times, and it doesn't feel like it's being its own thing. So there are scenes that as I'm watching it, I'm going, this really doesn't serve this whole story of Age of Ultron. It's serving either the next Thor movie, the next Cap movie, the next Avengers movie. I understand these movies have to do that. They've been doing that since the very first one, since Iron Man. But it makes the movie feel too packed. It makes the movie feel like, there's just so much going on. And I will say this movie is one of those movies that you need to see at least once more on the big screen, and because there is so much going on. And as a comic fan, I told my wife, I said, I don't just watch these movies. I'm watching it as a person who loves movies. I'm watching it as a person who loves superheroes. I'm watching it as a person who loves these characters and these actors. And then I'm watching it as a nerd who doesn't just love comics, but who is obsessed and has almost, years of experience of these storylines and knows all these. And I'm looking at all of that. And my wife said, can't you just enjoy the movie? And I said, that's how we nerd types like me at my level of geek, that's how we enjoy them, because we're looking for those things. So there's so much of that that at times the movie just feels like, oh God, I got to go back and watch this to see what was really going on. And that, it's kind of hard to get around that at this stage in the game. At the end of Phase 2, all these other movies in the background of this film leading up to this point, it's hard not to... It is like comics, and that's one of the complaints a lot of people who don't read comics have. You give them a comic, let's say it's, Avengers... They don't really do this high anymore. They kind of got away from the high numbering in the last few years. You used to be able, here's Avengers 522. You're like, what? I have to read 521 comics to understand this? And it feels almost like, at times, now they're setting up another storyline, and so it's not just being its own thing. At the same time, I'll go back to what I said in the good. You don't have to have followed those other movies to get it. But there are times where it feels like it wants you to look ahead instead of being in the moment. And that's a complaint that I have. And maybe I'd put that... The only reason that's bad is because it makes the movie over... It's kind of bloated. And that, I think, is a bad thing. Finally, the ugly. There's one thing here in ugly. I've read a lot of articles in the last week, and I've read a lot of message board comments and talked to people online about this, and I still feel like this incident that happens at the climax of the film, which I won't spoil. I could, because it's been out for a week. I refuse to take away somebody else's enjoyment of something. I know why it was done from a narrative standpoint. As a guy who studied writing and has done some writing and a lot of reading, I understand why it was done. I will say it is something with Joss Whedon specifically that he does often as a writer. Why at the same time, why it was done does not take away the fact that I did not agree with it. Okay. And not only that, but what happens and to whom it happens specifically is so obvious. After you see what happens, you're thinking, yeah, that was the only person this could happen to, and it feels like a plot device, and it feels and less like, if it had to happen, that it was a natural thing. Okay, so I don't want to give away what that is. When you see the movie, I think you'll understand. Some people won't be bothered by it because they don't have an attachment to the storyline. Having read comics for 30 years, I had not a huge attachment, but I thought, no, that didn't have to happen. That there was potential there that now is going to be changed, and I just didn't agree with that. All right, kids, that's my spoiler-free review. Overall, give it a B+. I think it's a great time. If I graded it just on the feeling and the emotion that I had after I saw the movie and while I saw the movie, in other words, pure enjoyment, I'd have to give it an A++. But on a subjective or an objective review there, looking at details, B+. It's a great time at the movies. It feels like a comic book come to life. That's the dream for geeks like me who love comics. And I think it's a good time in a movie. I don't think anybody who isn't reviewing movies like I'm doing is going to see these things that I say necessarily, or if they see them, won't diminish their enjoyment. I think it's a great time at the movies. It's a great flick. Highly recommend it. Go see it. Don't wait on video. Go see it on the big screen. It's a spectacle, and it's a spectacle in a good way. Unlike, and I will, this is something else I should put in the good, and I'll add it now as I think about it. This movie, as in the first Avengers movie, shows superheroes doing what superheroes do, which is protecting innocent people. That's why they're heroes. That's what the whole idea of a superhero is. I have these powers, I'm going to use them to help people. That is another thing that Man of Steel, I hate to go back to it, but as you can see, I have a bit of an issue with that movie, doesn't do in the way that Avengers does. And there are some lines in this movie, and I mentioned this earlier about the story. Cap has some lines in here that could have easily belonged to Superman. And those two characters are very similar anyway. But there are times I wanted to cry. I was like, that's what a hero is. That's what a human, real world hero should aspire to be. And it was inspiring. It was great stuff. So you'll see that in the movie during the climax when some serious crap is hitting the fan. Captain America comes through and says something so inspirational, and you're like, there you go, man. That's what it's all about. A superhero movie should be right there. So there you have it, kids. Go see Avengers Age of Ultron. When I get back, briefly wrap up the show and tell you what's coming next week. Stick around. Folks, I'm back. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of The Big Show with Chris Meaux. Thanks so much for listening. Next week, another new installment. I'm hoping to have a guest on the show next week to talk about, I don't know what yet, but hoping to have another voice on the show other than just mine next week. And again, I want to thank all of my supporters, those people who are in what I call the Big Show Trust or the Big Show Underwriters. You know who you are. You made this possible. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for making this happen. I ask all of you to do one thing. If you're hearing this already on iTunes, please rate, review, and subscribe. If you're not yet hearing it on iTunes, please know that the show is on iTunes. I am going to put a video up this weekend. Didn't get around to it last weekend on Big Show Video, Videaux. That's out on YouTube. And it will show you how to locate the podcast app on your iPhone, which I think it's a pretty new app. It's been maybe a couple of months that it's been part of the one of the software updates, and how to just add my show. Kids, you only have to put in the word SHEAUX, show with a Cajun flair, and you put that in, and it pulls my show. Why? Because it's the only Show on all of iTunes that has that spelling in it. So it's easy. It's so easy. So you just find the podcast app, you go to search, the little magnifying glass, click it, put show into the search field, bam, Big Show with Chris Meaux. Subscribe. Please rate, take the time to rate, review, share the Big Show with Chris Meaux with others, whether through Facebook or whatever, however you want to do it. And for all of those people who have listened and taken the time to give me feedback, thank you. Love you guys. Really do. Thanks so much for listening. And you will hear from me again next week. Stay safe. Have a great weekend. Until next week. Oh, one other thing. To all the moms, we love you. There's no one like your mom. My mom, I doubt she's listening. She might be. If she is, I love you, Mom. And to my wife, the mother of my 2 gorgeous children, thank you for giving me these beautiful daughters. And I love you. That's it, kids. Have a great weekend. If you haven't recently, make sure you tell your mom you love her. Remember, leave the places you go and the people you meet better than they were when you found them. Call Battery Cheeseburger Symphony. Ted Danson? Folks, and welcome to this week's episode of The Big Show with Chris Meaux. I am he who has already now previously been mentioned, Chris Meaux, and I'm coming to you from The Big Show production compound, a.k.a. The Big Show Studios, a.k.a. the 3rd bedroom here in our home in beautiful Lafayette, Louisiana, the hub city, the heart of Cajun country. It is Friday, May the 15th, 2015, and I hope you are doing great. If you are a graduate and are listening to this, you are awesome. Thank you for listening. You clearly have other more important and fun things to do if you just graduated from college or high school or whatever it might be. But if you're listening to this, hey man, you rock. Thanks so much. Congratulations, or perhaps I should say, I don't know, congratulations. I kind of figured that would be... I figured that would be the response. Congratulations to all of our graduates. Well, this week's episode of The Big Show with Chris Meaux will be a smaller, or I suppose I should say shorter episode, because the show can never be small. It's always going to be big. That's why it's called The Big Show. That's my Dennis Miller circa 1993 impersonation for all of those who are old enough to remember what that sounded like. I've got a brief show for you this week, only because there's really, there's not a whole much. I am unable to speak in words that are coherent, which is a problem for a podcaster. I have problems. I have a lot of mental problems. Right? I have a big trouble sometimes, like finishing sentences and phrases and saying things that make sense. For example, car battery, cheeseburger, symphony. It's like that, right? Like, do you see what I did there? Anyway, we're going to run right into this week's monologue here, and I do have a new segment I'm introducing this week on the show, and we'll get to that later on when its time comes. Ooh, that sounds final, and it sounds profound. What is this, Dr. Oz? I don't know what's happening. We'll be back with a monologue in just a bit. Stick around. Hope you are as well. Well, let's jump right into this week's news here in the monologue. Saudi King Salman wasn't able to attend the Gulf Nation Summit in the U.S. that happened this past week due to a very hectic schedule. He actually told reporters, "I'd love to be there, but I'm so busy right now, I'm up a creek." So That's, I'll let you think about, let that one percolate. Let that light enter into your subconscious. Let it worm its way in. And then when it gets there, perhaps it'll then be less like a worm and more like a seed that grows, and you'll understand it better, all right? And then get back to me on that joke. Justin Bieber this week, speaking of worms, no, I don't know, that's not nice. Justin Bieber revealed the qualities he's looking for in a woman this past week. At the top of his list, he's looking for another woman who also enjoys urinating in mop buckets. So, Ed, come on, man. That's not nice to J. Biebs, the Biebster, the Jster. It's not fair. Come on, Ed. You're better than that, buddy. Well, Fox announced this past week, sad news for some people, that it is actually going to be canceling American Idol. I know, it's a shame. It's a shame. However, lots of folks, myself included, are happy to see that finally Fox has figured out when and how to cancel the shows that actually deserve to be canceled. So that was going to be it. No, see, that was supposed to be this. But that's what happens here. I have a crack team of a crack staff, if you will, and it's actually a staff on crack. That's right. But anyway, yeah. The joke there is because Fox will cancel great shows, and then they'll leave something like American Idol, which I know it has a lot of fans, but I think it jumped the shark a long time ago, and that has lasted for, 40, 50 years now? So I don't know. Anyway. Now, speaking of cancellations, on a different network, CBS has announced that it is canceling the original CSI. That's right, the original CSI, which once upon a time was a great show. This was news to 99.9% of all the people on Earth, because they all took some time to report in their thoughts on this news. Not because of the cancellation, mind you, but because they had no idea that the show was actually still on the air. So they were just shocked that it hadn't gone away a long time ago. I mean, once Ted Danson got on the show, it's like, really? I'm sure he's a lovely fellow, but Ted Danson? I don't know. It just doesn't seem right somehow. All right. Moving on, the Fast and the Furious series, speaking of something that I think should have been canceled after the first movie, it's getting the theme park treatment with an upcoming ride teased by Universal Studios, giving participants a chance to know what it's like to star in a series of overrated movies that target the lowest common denominator of human intelligence. So, who wouldn't pay to do that? No, that's, again, Ed, come on, man. That's not fair. It's, those are good movies, right? Excuse me, I'm sure they're fine. I mean, cars and hot chicks and going off cliffs and shooting, and it's, what else could you want? Here's something I definitely don't want. Sarah Jessica Parker has, this past week, intimated, whatever you want to call it, that a third Sex in the City film is forthcoming. That's right. She's hinting that teasing that there will be a third Sex in the City film at some point in the not-so-distant future. Now, this is big news because there's no word yet, and I reported on this last week or the week before. There's no word yet on how Parker's role in that film will affect her role in the rebooted Mr. Ed. So she's a big part of that show. The new Mr. Ed. She's the star. Oh. Easy, big fella. Oh, all right. Yes, I'll get you a sugar cube. Hang on. All right. Now, moving on out of the realm of entertainment, this is a true story. A British man is now breathing clearly for the first time in 44 years. Get this, after sneezing out a dime-sized suction cup that became lodged in his sinus cavity when he was a child. When asked what he plans to do with that suction cup, the man responded, "That's not anyone's business but mine." So, because it's not... No. Again, I'm firing the writers. I promise you, this will be the week, kids, when I make good on that promise. And I fire the writers. I give you my promise in my Kennedy accent voice. It's not an accent. It's not a... Kennedys weren't an ethnic group or a region. They're a family. But this is my Kennedy accent. I promise you this, they will be fired. All right. In the realm of non-entertainment but still bizarre, a Maryland woman, get this, was arrested after she served milk to her family that included dead skin shaved from the bottoms of her feet. Police found no evidence. Actually, you know what that deserves? Dead skin in milk. I think that deserves one of these. Yeah. Police found no evidence that anyone else was in on the poisoning, leaving the woman as the sole suspect of the crime. So, sole suspect. Can you imagine that, though? You're drinking the milk, and then there's just shavings of mom's feet, dead skin. What is she? Good Lord. What does she use? The pet egg you got her for Mother's Day to shave her skin right into the... Ugh. Anyway. Finally, this week's monologue here. The natural? Yes, the natural. Now I'm talking to myself. The Natural Resource Defense Council reports that leaving everyday appliances plugged in when not in use consumes energy that can lead, or has led, I should say, to an annual loss of $19 billion. That's huge. Upon hearing this report, Al Gore agreed to be unplugged overnight to lessen his energy footprint. So nothing like a joke that was probably more fitting and would be funnier, I don't know, 05? I don't know, 06? Even then? I don't know. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's monologue, albeit a short one. Hopefully it was a enjoyable one. When we get back from this break, kids, it'll be time for this week's edition of the Big Show Geek Peek. Stick around. Big Show Geek Peek this week. Big one. First of all, some of these are just bullet points. It's not necessarily long stuff here. The lovely Kate Beckinsale. Hello, Kate, if you're listening. It's good to hear about you again. Miss you. Actually, Kate Beckinsale just called in. Only I can hear her. Hi, Kate. Well, sure. I'd love to go to dinner. You do know I'm married, though. No? Oh, you're Mormon. Why? Maybe I could convince my wife that we too could become more. Anyway, I got to do a show. We'll get back on the phone later. I don't know what that was, kids. That was bizarre. Kate Beckinsale, it has been announced this past week, will return for a 5th Underworld film. Now, I got to be honest, kids. I only saw the first one. I've heard great things. My brother, in fact, is a big fan of Underworld, and it's vampires and werewolves and such. How could I not like it? But I never got around to seeing the ones after the first one. I love the first one. I don't remember much of it because Kate Beckinsale's in it wearing leather, so that's really all. I never made it past that, but that's great. I'm hoping they'll release all 4 in a package deal, and then I can watch them before this movie. Speaking of movies that are getting another sequel, a movie series. This week it was announced, actually this morning I read this, Rise and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes director Matt Reeves revealed the title for the next installment in the series is going to be War of the Planet of the Apes. Now I'm going to just give you my thoughts as a nerd, as a geek, also as an English major, as a writer. I love the first movie. I didn't get to see the second one yet, but I love the originals, and it's far better so far than anything that happened with the sad Tim Burton version. So, look, I am a huge fan. I think Matt Reeves, great director, but I understand that is critical to these movies and has been since the original, Dawn of the Planet, Planet of the Apes, then Return to Planet of the Apes, or Beneath the Planet of the Apes. But I think that having, Rise of, Dawn of, and now War of the, I ask this question. First of all, is the planet itself, Earth, is it warring with apes and humans? No, of course not, right? I don't think that's the plot of the next movie. It's not a Captain Power episode. Secondly, I think that the of the is a little much. You got to be thinking about marketing and kind of a catchy brevity when it comes to marketing. So you're going to put this on packages here. War of the Planet of the Apes. War of the Planet of the Apes. I recommend this title. Matt Reeves, I'm sure he's listening. He's a loyal listener. Oh, no, it's sad. It's very sad. this is all I'm going to say is I think it would be better if it was War on Planet of the Apes. And I'll tell you why, because to me, that sounds, first of all, it's briefer. Second of all, it sounds like a headline. War on Planet of the Apes. And I just think that's my best Don Pardo. War on Planet of the Apes. And it's something like you could imagine, you know, one of these old 60s sci-fi movies having that kind of title, which, of course, the first Planet of the Apes film was. Let me take your stinking hands off me, you damn dirty ape. That's my best Chuck Heston there. All right, anyway, good Lord. Moving on. Now, the CW has released a trailer for the Arrow Flash spin-off team series called DC's Legends of Tomorrow, another kind of cumbersome title, in my opinion. This film, it's not a film, TV series is going to have Adam, who's played by Brandon Routh, who was Superman in Superman Returns, and who I think got an unfair shake with a kind of a weak movie. He was not the problem. I think he should have got another try at it. I liked him a lot more than like this Henry Cavill cat. And again, Henry Cavill also got an unfair shake because, you know, Hobo of Steel is it's not a Superman movie in my opinion. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But Adam is in this film. He's currently in the Arrow TV show as a supporting cast member. White Canary. Now, I'm not going to say any more about that because if you don't know who that is, and she's not a character in the comics I'm aware of, but she's based on another character who's in Arrow. No spoilers. White Canary, Hawkgirl, Firestorm, who is in The Flash and is actually a supporting character there. And then Captain Cold and Heatwave, who are two members of The Flash's Rogues Gallery. They're going to be in this show. And the villain of the series is one of the best DC Comics villains of all time, in my opinion, Vandal Savage. His backstory, very briefly, for you non-comic book or DC Comics enthusiasts / readers / geeks like myself. Vandal Savage was actually a caveman, and there is during prehistoric times, there is a meteorite that lands, and he goes and touches this meteorite, and it imbues him with this radiation that accelerates his mind. It actually increases his mental capacity, and so he suddenly becomes the most intelligent man on Earth, and then continues to grow in intelligence, and as a byproduct of that radiation also becomes immortal. So what's great about him is he can be the villain over centuries upon centuries, and has been in the comics. He could be a villain fighting Jonah Hex, who was in the Old West. He could be a villain of Batman, Superman. He could be a villain of the Legion of Superheroes in the 31st century because he's immortal. So this is going to be interesting. There is a time. I've watched the trailer. It does have a time travel component. It looks very cool. I have a link to DC's Legends of Tomorrow, the trailer, in the show notes, so check that out. Speaking of DC television action, CBS released a 6-minute preview of the November premiering Supergirl. I mentioned last week the trailer was coming out, and watched the trailer with my daughters. They really liked it. Even my wife liked it. It is kind of targeting, I don't know, maybe the late teen demographic, but I think I'm hoping will be appropriate for younger girls. Girls need a superhero, man. They need somebody to represent the ladies, the girls, right? At this time. And Supergirl, who better than Superman's cousin? And Supergirl's a great character, always has been. If you don't know, Kara Zor-El is Superman's first cousin. Her dad, Zor-El, is Jor-El, who is Kal-El's father, Superman's biological father. They're brothers, and Supergirl ends up getting sent at a later age, an older age, to Earth from Krypton years after Krypton has exploded. It's kind of a convoluted story, but it's really not. It can be convoluted, but they've done a nice job in this trailer of kind of giving you the bullet points of it. So that's coming out in November. A second trailer, which was actually leaked. It's not officially from CBS, but it's great. 2-minute trailer was released this morning. I've got a link to both trailers in the show notes. Be sure to check that out. By the way, Melissa I can't pronounce her name. I think it's Benoist. She was on Glee, apparently. Pardon me, I had to sip on some agua, por favor. Agua, por favor. I don't know what's happening. But she is from Glee, and apparently my wife said that's good because she was good in Glee. I never watched Glee, so I don't know. But anyway, check out that link there. Now, last week I reported in the Big Show Geek Peek that there were a number of contenders for the role of the new Marvel Studios / Sony Spider-Man, who will be a teenaged version of Spider-Man, as he was most popularly in the comics. And so they had a list of 5 actors. The only one that I really was familiar with was Asa Butterfield. He was in both Hugo and Ender's Game, and it is rumored heavily this past week that Asa Butterfield is in heavy, serious negotiations with Marvel and Sony. In other words, he is the guy they're looking at, and he would, I think, be kind of loony to not take it, but we'll see. So I'll keep you updated on that in future installments. Moving on out of the realm of superheroes, The Blob. Now, just briefly, I don't want to get too detailed in this. The original Blob movie, when I was a kid, growing up in Abbeville, Louisiana, 2 things kind of coalesced to make this happen. One was that Blockbuster Video, which you youngsters may not remember. Blockbuster Video, back in my day, you had to get in your car and drive to a video store to get your video cassette, and your video game. It wasn't one of these discs; it was a cartridge, good sturdy thing. You could prop open a door just as soon as play it. I'm sorry. Again, I didn't take my medicine this week. Something's happening. But our Blockbuster in little old Abbeville had an awesome catalog of old classic sci-fi horror movies and horror movies from the 60s, 70s, and one of my favorites that I watched was the original Blob with James Dean, not the guy that makes breakfast sausage. That's Jimmy Dean. This is the guy, James Dean, the actor, and he's in this film. And it's a great movie. I always liked it, and I thought it was just a neat premise. This creature that once it consumes one person, it begins to grow and grow, and when will it stop? And there's a lot of people on Earth, so it could be a world level threat, right? In the 80s, around 1987 or 88, the movie was released in 88. They did a remake of The Blob, and they filmed it in the small town of Abbeville, Louisiana, where I grew up. And it was fascinating because we heard, of course, back then there was no internet, kids. Here we go again. The old man. There was no internet. Okay, kids. So, it was word of mouth in a small town. It was also the newspaper, the local paper, and it was even reported on the news. And Entertainment Tonight talked about this. I can remember that distinctly. And Abbeville being at least videoed on Entertainment Tonight. They were filming this remake of The Blob in Abbeville, and they renamed it Arborville because I guess Abbeville didn't really fit their vision for the fictional city. They actually added mountains to the back of the St. Mary Magdalene Catholic Church, which is gorgeous, down the centerpiece of Abbeville and the Magdalene Square. But they filmed right in those areas, and they actually filmed a scene of there are some teenagers in the movie that are main characters, and they play football, and they filmed a football game at our at our football field over at Vermilion Catholic High School, where I went. So I actually remember going. I was not yet in high school, was in 8th grade, but I remember sitting there with my friends. We were in the bleachers watching as they're filming this and watching this fake game that was being put on with the VC football players. And I forget, I think they just split the team up, and then the other team, or maybe they got Abbeville High, who's a public school. I don't remember, but it was awesome. And my mom, and if I've not said it before, let me just say, kids, my mom's awesome. Oh, Mom, I love you. I'm gonna cry. She probably could have been arrested. Today would be, under a prison somewhere for doing this, but there was a scene in the remake, which is a great movie. I think it stands the test of time. I think it's a really good flick. You can find it pretty easily on Amazon. The Blob remake, 1988. She went and there's a scene where the Blob is actually frozen by, what do you call that stuff? The propellant in a fire extinguisher. And she went on to, there wasn't a stage, it was outside. It was outside of an old gas station in Abbeville where they filmed it, and broke off a piece of the Blob and brought it to me and my brother. I still have mine. I'm actually looking at it right now. It's here in the Big Show studios over our computer there on the computer desk or hutch, and that was just an amazing thing to know that I had a part of that. And there's a great scene at the end of the movie where a character has a piece of the blob that was frozen in a jar, and at the end of the movie, it's alive. So it's like, ooh, setting up a sequel that never happened. So it's very cool. They are making a new version of the blob yet again, and they released this past week. Who are this mysterious they? The people behind this movie released that so far, the only person linked to this movie, Samuel L. Jackson, will play a biochemist who is facing the blob. Now, I love Samuel L. Jackson. I just think at this point in his career, he is seen as a guy who brings two things to a movie: one, badassery, and the other, humor. And sometimes the humor comes from the badassery and vice versa, which is not how you say it. It's vice versa. Anyway, I'm just not sure I see him in that role. I want like a hardcore R-rated serious horror movie with the blob, and I know some people are like, it's the blob, but anyway, that was my hope, to see what they could do with that. I don't know, I reserve judgment until I see more, but Sam Jackson's been cast this time. Also a change that was released: instead of coming from space as the blob did in the 50s and in the 80s version, or 60s and 80s, he is going to come, or it is probably genderless, comes from under the ground. All right, speaking of trailers, a new trailer for Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak was released this past week. If you don't know who that is, some of you, Guillermo del Toro made the excellent horror movie Mimic back in the late 90s, 98, 99. And then after that went on to make some critically acclaimed, and I believe Academy Award nominated and perhaps even won a few movies. Pan's Labyrinth was one of them. He also produced the Hellboy films, directed those, co-wrote those great films. And he also did one of my favorite movies, which is, I think, savagely underrated, and that is Pacific Rim. It doesn't get cooler than people piloting giant robots and fighting giant monsters. I mean, how awesome was it? I thought it was a great movie, and it just didn't seem to do that well. Unfortunately, I think people thought it was more like Transformers, which compared to Pac Rim is crap. Anyway, my opinion. The trailer for Crimson Peak, which Crimson Peak is the kind of horror movie we need today. What am I, running for a campaign? It's the kind of horror movie we need today. It is a gothic horror movie, so you're going to rely more on things like characterization and atmosphere and ambiance to create horror. It's about a haunted home, a haunted house, but it's so much more than that. There's a lot of other weird stuff in this trailer, man. You got to check it out. Have a link for that. Crimson Peak, it comes out this October, which is when a horror movie should come out. I've got a link to the trailer in the show notes. Be sure to check it out. Vanity Fair last week or the week before covered Star Wars in a wonderful exclusive that they did. They took photos and also a little behind the scenes video. That video you can find on the YouTubes. You can also find the photos on the Google, on the internet there. And they revealed that the name of the Chrome Stormtrooper. Now, if you saw the Episode 7 teaser trailer, the Force Awakens trailer came out about a month ago at this point. You notice this stormtrooper wearing silver armor. She's got like a cape on one side, or we didn't know, he or she, and then this big gun. There were rumors that it was a character played by Gwendolyn Christie, who is a 6'2" tall actress. She's beautiful, by the way. She's also very tall, and her name, the character's name, Captain Phasma. And I tell you what, kids, if I were a rebel, or they're actually called the Resistance now, I would pee in my pants. She is very, in the picture that you can find, and I'll have a link in the show notes, she is scary and intimidating looking, man. She looks like she could really screw up some good guys. So excited to see that. Then finally, this really doesn't fall under the usual geek spectrum, but I wanted to mention it because I'm a huge fan. David Letterman, of course, wrapping up his time as host of The Late Show and his 34-year, I believe it is, career as a late-night talk show host. He is going to have his last show next Wednesday night, and Bill Murray will be on the second to last show. Now, Bill was his first guest on The Late Show and back on the original Late Night, and the last show, which doesn't have any scheduled guests, is described by CBS as an hour filled with surprises. Looking forward to that. That's next Wednesday night. And I just want to say one thing. It's bittersweet because I know Dave is getting up there and does have a young son, and wants to spend time with him, and that's one of the reasons he cited for retiring. But I just feel, to paraphrase Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back, when Conan O'Brien is gone, when Dave is gone, the last of the true late night talk show hosts you will be. As if Yoda were talking to Conan. Conan's the last of that breed, and when he's gone, that's it. Nothing against Jimmy Kimmel personally or Jimmy Fallon. I just don't think they have that quality that Carson had, that Letterman had, that Conan has, and it's sad to see him go. So it's also historic. Be sure to check it out. What's his name? I don't even know his name. Stephen Colbert. Will Colbert have that quality? I never really watched the Colbert Report. It seemed very different from what a talk show is in the classic version of that, which has been around now for about 50 plus years. So we'll see what they're going to do with that. I don't know. Anyway, that does it for this week's edition of The Big Show Geek Peek. When I get back, a new segment that I'm unveiling this week. Stick around to see what it is. Folks, with this new segment, it is the Big Show Twitter Tracker. Now, I believe in giving credit where credit is due, and back in the brief time, sadly too brief, when Conan O'Brien was host of The Tonight Show, he had a segment that was one of my favorite ones he's done on any show, and sadly he didn't get to take it with him to TBS. It was called Twitter Tracker, and it was hilarious. So what I'm doing is taking that name, it's now the Big Show Twitter Tracker, and I'm doing something a little different. I'm taking a trending topic that interests me, and I'm going to read a few of the tweets that I think are funny or interesting, and then I add my own. So I did this earlier today, and I will read some of the ones that I think are funny, and then read mine. And that's the segment. So, Big Show Twitter Tracker, first edition here. The trend of the week, or the trend that caught my attention this week that I thought was really fun and funny, is hashtag add a profession, ruin a movie. So it's pretty simple. You take a movie title, you take out one of the words in that title, and then put in its place a profession. And depending on the profession and the word you take out, it can be quite funny what you come up with. Let me read some of my favorites that are here on the old Twitter now. Let's see. There is the Texas Chain Store Manager, which I think is very funny. That's from Ross Barron over on Twitter there. There's also this one's a little racy, kids. The Princess Bride's Gynecologist. Now, you see, I read that one because it's a little racy and I'm kind of crazy that way, but two, because that violated the rule. Okay, so Ed Hill is this guy's name. Hey, Ed, you broke the rules, guy. You don't add a word to the title. You take a word out and then put that. Am I even talking? You put a word in and take one out and then put one in is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so that doesn't work. Conan the Librarian, which I've seen more than once. More than one person came up with that idea, and I think it's hilarious. This is probably my favorite, or certainly top two. The Good, the Bad, and the Mattress Store Spokeswoman in Khaki Pants. I think that's awesome. There's also, this is a great one here from @ZombiesUnbound. The Fault in Our Co-Stars. That's a great one. And there's also Harry Pot Dealer, which I don't think that really is a profession. I don't know how it works. There's Forrest Gump from Lynn Schiff @Signs of Life. Their USA Today's suggestion was Parental Guardians of the Galaxy. Not bad. Tax Return of the Jedi from @Barry Davies. Not bad, I suppose. This one I thought was pretty fun. I don't know why librarians are getting this focus. The Silence of the Librarians. And then finally, one more that is not one I wrote that I really like. I think this might be my favorite. The Texas Chain Store Manager. So there you have it, kids. Now, here's my addition. Now, being the person I am and having the mindset that I do, I'm a sick guy sometimes. So what I did was, for hashtag add a profession, ruin a movie, my addition to the many other tweets is colorectin. Ugh, I messed that up. I got to start that over. So my addition is, for or to this long list of tweets here. My addition is colorectal surgeon of the living dead. That's right, kids. Colorectal surgeon of the living dead. Yikes. That's a hell of a job. Wouldn't want to have that job. What about you, Ed? Do you think you'd want to have that job? Ed won't even answer me. He's not even answering me. So all I can really say about being a colorectal surgeon of the living dead is wear gloves. I just think you'd want to, like a body glove, you'd want to have a biosuit. I would think would be a good idea there. Well, there you have it, kids. The first edition of the Big Show Twitter Tracker. Well, thanks so much for listening, kids. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the show right here. And thanks for listening. Next week, another installment in the ongoing saga that is the Big Show with Chris Meaux. Thanks so much for listening. I didn't do a break for, or that has my social media contact information, but I'll tell you now how to do that. You can get in touch with me on the old Facebook. Just search The Big Show with Chris Meaux. Remember, show is SHEAUX. Also, you can get in touch with me via email, The Big Show at gmail.com. And then you can also get to me on Twitter. Right now, the best way on Twitter to reach me is at Moses. That's MEAUXSES. And then finally, you can get in touch with me on YouTube or find some content there on YouTube. It is Big Show Video spelled VIDEAUX. And I've got some videos there and more to come. Thanks so much for listening. I want to thank all of those who have given me feedback, those who have shared links. I, of course, as always, want to thank the Big Show underwriters for the work that they have done and the great support they've given me. Couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. And to all of our graduates this week, congratulations. I hope you have a great week, a great summer, whatever it might be, whatever your interim time is. Maybe you're going right into the, quote, real world, unquote, whatever it is. Good luck. Stay safe. I wish you the best. And you'll hear from me again next week, kids. Until then, be sure to leave the places you go and the people you meet better than they were when you found them. Take care.